Chapter 1771. Miao Fushan nodded, and took a step forward to look at Mao Zhen. Something seemed to be surging in the depths of his weathered eyes, and his expression was somewhat complicated. Back then, he had indeed thought highly of Mao Zhen, and admired him very much. When he heard that Mao Zhen had killed 7 of his own kind, he had been in disbelief. He had even pleaded for mercy on his behalf, hoping that the patriarch and the others at that time would investigate the matter thoroughly. Unfortunately, the truth came to light later, and everything proved that Mao Zhen was guilty. He had been sad about this for a long time, not only for Mao Zhen, but also for the entire Great Phoenix Dragon tribe. Because Mao Zhen was a publicly acknowledged genius, they had always had high hopes for him, hoping that he could lead the entire Great Phoenix Dragon tribe to greater glory. Unfortunately, everything had turned into an illusion. Who would have thought that they would see Mao Zhen again after 1,000 years? Mao Zhen, do you have any evidence for what you said just now? Miao Fushan asked in a deep voice. Mao Zhen smiled and said frankly, no. Everyone fell silent for a moment, then quickly became noisy. No. He had no evidence, and he was still so confident. Was he toying with them? Miao Fushan's expression also turned cold. Mao Zhen, you have to pay attention to evidence when you speak. If you don't have evidence, what you said just now proves that what you said was baseless accusations. Mao Yang's eyes flashed with mockery and ridicule. Now there was no need for him to say anything. Mao Zhen's actions had already angered many people. There was no saving him from his own death. Mao Zhen's expression did not change, and he was still frank and upright. Back then, Mao Yang had destroyed all the evidence in order to put him to death. At that time, he had not been able to find any clues, let alone now. Of course it's not baseless accusations. Mao Zhen said. What I said is the truth. Mao Yang sneered. Since there's no evidence, how can we believe you? Are you telling the truth, just because you say it's the truth? How could there be such a good thing in the world? At this moment, everyone gradually came to their senses. That's right. Without evidence, how can we believe him? When I saw how confident he was earlier, I thought he really had sufficient evidence. Who knew that he was just talking? That's right. We can't just believe whatever he says. The people who did such crazy things back then can't be trusted at all. In my opinion, the patriarch should just kill him directly. If you continue to ask, it will only be a waste of energy and time. Everyone was discussing spiritedly, but their attitudes were surprisingly unanimous. Chu Luiyue knitted her brows slightly as she listened. Everyone in the Great Void Phoenix Dragon tribe hated Mao Zhen. It wouldn't be that easy to turn the tables around. As if sensing her thoughts, Rong Xiu held her hand and gently rubbed his fingers on the back of her hand as he softly said, "Don't worry. 1,000 years is too long. It's not a simple matter to change their inherent thinking." Chu Luiyue gently nodded. There weren't many people who were related to that incident that year. Most of the people in the square were juniors. They had been influenced since they were young. When the name Mao Zhen was mentioned, they would subconsciously associate it with words like betrayal and madness. When they saw Mao Zhen, they were naturally biased. It was indeed impossible for them to change their minds with just a few sentences, unless Mao Zhen could produce solid evidence. But Mao Zhen himself had said that he had no evidence about those things. Chu Luiyue looked up and stared at Mao Zhen for a while. The current situation didn't seem to affect him. He was still calm, indifferent and calm. When he looked at Mao Yang, there was even a hint of a mocking smile at the corners of his eyes. Chu Luiyue suddenly felt assured. Mao Zhen must have other trump cards. Mao Fushan shook his head, unable to hide his disappointment. He originally thought that, Mao Zhen, since you don't have evidence then, there's no need to continue. Mao Fushan took a step back and raised his hand. The surrounding elders immediately stepped forward. Mao Yang's lips curled into a cold smile, but he quickly pursed it and lowered his eyes to hide the smugness in them. Mao Zhen must die today. However, at this moment, Mao Zhen suddenly laughed. I don't have evidence, but what I said just now is the truth. If you don't believe me, I don't care. Because the main purpose of my return today is to take back what belongs to me. As he spoke, he looked at Mao Yang. Mao Yang suddenly felt a chill down his spine. A wave of extremely dangerous aura suddenly attacked. He subconsciously looked up. He saw Mao Zhen looking at him with a faint smile. Mao Yang, you stole my bloodline power back then. After using it for so many years, it's time to return it. As soon as he finished speaking, a purple gold flame suddenly erupted from his body. At the same time, two faint explosions suddenly came from Mao Yang's back. Bang bang! Two bloody holes appeared on both sides of his shoulder blades. Blood splattered everywhere. Immediately after, flames suddenly burned at the wounds. The blazing flames caused the temperature of the entire square to rise rapidly. Everyone was shocked. Mao Zhen's bloodline power was actually as rich and rich as before. Mao Yang also panicked. He could clearly feel that the power in his body was rapidly flowing away. Mao Zhen, you, Chi. Before he could finish his sentence, the two balls of flames suddenly turned into knives and ruthlessly cut off Mao Yang's two arms. Then, with blood and wind, he went straight for Mao Zhen. Digression. Starting from 10 o'clock tonight, Xiaoxiang will be free for 24 hours, so the update on the 10th will be released at 10 o'clock at night. Then, Xuqing's free time will be 2 hours later than Xiaoxiang, so the real update will start in the early morning of the 11th. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1772. Mao Yang screamed as his body fell heavily to the ground. Excruciating pain came from his shoulders. It was so painful that he was trembling all over. His two arms had fallen not far from his eyes. Mao Yang's pupils shrank as he saw his two arms lying on the ground, dripping with blood. His body trembled even more violently. An indescribable fear surged from the bottom of his heart. The crowd in the square was also stunned by this scene. Everything happened too quickly. Before they could even react to what had happened, they saw Mao Yang's two arms being chopped off. On the other hand, Mao Zhen's situation was completely different from Mao Yang's. The two balls of flames flew to his front and landed lightly on his shoulders. They quickly transformed into two arms. In the dazzling light, one could vaguely see streaks of blood. A faint smell of blood permeated the air. Chu Luiyue was shocked and instinctively looked at Rongxiu. Rongxiu's lips curved slightly, and he nodded affirmatively. Chu Luiyue widened his eyes slightly. Mao Zhen had taken back his bloodline power and restored his physical body to its original state. Such boldness and strength were really rare. Because of the pain, the veins on Mao Zhen's forehead and neck were bulging. There was even a trace of madness in his eyes. Forcibly regrowing his arms was different from asking Rongxiu to help him rebuild his physical body. From a certain point of view, this meant that they had to endure more danger and torture. After all, one was starting from scratch, while the other was breaking it and starting from the beginning. The latter was obviously more difficult, but Mao Zhen still did it without hesitation. As the two arms gradually formed, Mao Zhen's aura rose again. The few elders standing at the front were unable to withstand the pressure and took a few steps back. Their faces were filled with shock. Even if Mao Zhen did not die back then, his physical body was indeed damaged. They could tell that he must have asked Rongxiu and Shang Guanyu for help. However, the level of that skeleton wasn't particularly high. Otherwise, Mao Yao wouldn't have let go of the grave mistake he had made so easily. Logically speaking, Mao Zhen shouldn't have any strength left. But now, not only did he easily defeat Mao Yang, his own cultivation base was still rising. Miao Fushan's expression was complicated. Mao Zhen. She was still the Mao Zhen from back then. At that time, he was the most outstanding genius in the entire clan. Most of the juniors had only heard that he had brutally killed his own kind and had gone mad. They didn't know much about his talents and abilities. In fact, shocking talent, only seen once in 10,000 years. This description was absolutely not an exaggeration. Even after so many years, there was still no one who could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. Not even Mao Yang. Everyone stared at Mao Zhen with their mouths agape, deeply shocked by the scene before them. He didn't even have time to care about Mao Yang, who was lying on the ground. In fact, at this time, no one dared to come forward. Mao Zhen could easily cut off both of Mao Yang's arms and forcibly take away the two balls of flames that contained powerful power from his body. This was enough to explain the problem. That power must have belonged to Mao Zhan. If he wanted to take back his bloodline power, who could stop him? In other words, at least this part of what he said just now was absolutely true. Many people's hearts were filled with doubts and confusion. If this was true, then what about the others? Who killed the 7 of his own kind back then? Mao Yang spat out a mouthful of blood, his heart filled with hatred. He wanted to stand up, but without both of his arms, this movement became very difficult. After several attempts, he finally succeeded. But at this time, his body was covered in dirty blood, and he looked extremely miserable. He no longer had the glory and honor of being the clan leader. He stared at Mao Zhan not far away. His eyes dyed with a layer of scarlet. No wonder Mao Zhan was so bold. So there was still such a move, saying that there was no evidence. It was all nonsense. Mao Zhan was clearly waiting for him here. Mao Yang's hatred for Mao Zhan had reached its peak. He knew very well that no matter what the result was today, his reputation, his status, his everything, would be in jeopardy. He spat out a mouthful of blood and sternly said, "Everyone listen to my order. Mao Zhan has evil intentions, kill him on the spot." But as his voice fell, no one in the square moved. Mao Yang looked around as if he had gone mad. "What are all of you rebelling? You even turned a deaf ear to this clan leader's order." Mao Fushan looked at him and said indifferently, "Clan leader, now that the truth is gradually emerging, how can we act? But you still haven't explained clearly why Mao Zhan's bloodline power is in your body. I thought that Mao Yang had obtained an excellent inheritance that allowed him to advance by leaps and bounds. But now it seems that there might be a great secret hidden here." Mao Fushan's question left Mao Fushan speechless. His Adam's apple bobbed and his lips trembled, but he did not say anything. How could he explain? There was no way to explain this at all. They were all from the same clan, and they all understood the power of bloodlines. It was impossible for him to fool them. Looking at his reaction, Mao Fushan's guess was confirmed. He closed his eyes and sighed softly. "Why?" Mao Yang's heart turned cold. "Elder Fushan, you would rather listen to the words of a lunatic than believe me?" Mao Fushan paused. "Clan leader, who is the crazy person?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1773. Mao Yang was suddenly at a loss for words. Miao Fushan stared into his eyes, his gaze as sharp as a knife. It was as if he wanted to cut him open and see everything. At this moment, Mao Yang suddenly realized that Miao Fushan no longer trusted him. He subconsciously avoided Miao Fushan's gaze. However, the gazes from all directions were faintly converging on him at this moment, causing him to feel as if there were daggers at his back. The feeling of uneasiness grew. Mao Yang's breathing became rapid, his heart beating violently, to the point that he could no longer care about the pain in his body. Miao Fushan retracted his gaze and looked at Mao Zhan. However, he had already made a decision in his heart. He was very familiar with both Mao Zhan and Mao Yang. The current Mao Zhan, on the surface, looked as arrogant as before, but his eyes were firm and restrained from beginning to end. He did not look mad at all. On the other hand, Mao Yang was different. Ever since he knew that Rong Xiao and Shang Guanyu had quietly left 7 Lotus Peak and entered the coiling dragon pillar of the Temple of Void, he had been in a very strange state. Compared to before, not only had he become irritable, but he had also become impulsive. This state reached its peak after seeing Mao Zhan appear. If Mao Yang was really innocent back then, why did he not let Mao Zhan finish? Why did he not agree to let them find out the truth? The answer was obvious. The pain in his body gradually subsided. Mao Zhan slowly opened his eyes and looked down at his arms. "It's really been a long time." He clenched his fists lightly, feeling the surging power in his body, and sighed softly. Back then, Mao Yang had purposely chosen to attack him when he was at his weakest to succeed. He had also tried to defend himself, but unfortunately, no one believed him back then. Even if he wanted revenge, he was already an arrow at the end of its flight. There was nothing he could do. In the end, he could only choose to hibernate in the coiling dragon pillar. This wait lasted for over 1,000 years. He had once thought that there was no hope for him to come out. Fortunately, the heavens took pity on him and gave him another chance. Almost at the same time, the purple gold light next to Dumpling suddenly moved. The void trembled and ripples spread out. Chu Luiyue looked back, his eyes moving slightly. Then, a slender hand reached out from the ball of light. Dumpling suddenly widened her eyes. Hand. A human hand? This, under her shocked gaze. A tall and slender figure walked out of the purple gold light. It was a young man who looked to be in his 20s. His cheeks were thin, and his facial features were deep and handsome. Between his eyebrows, there was a purple gold vertical mark. It made him look even more demonic. He was very tall, and wore a long black robe, which made his shoulders seem even wider and his waist narrow, and his figure tall and slender. His eyes were cold and sharp, and his lips were extremely thin. When he slightly pursed his lips, it naturally carried a bit of a cold aura. And he was imposing without being angry. Dumpling's black grape-like eyes widened. She pointed her chubby little finger at him and stuttered. You're Zichen? Hearing this, Zichen looked over with an indifferent expression. Thank you for your help. He was thanking Dumpling for all the help she had given him. Zichen had always been a cold and taciturn person. It was not easy for him to say such words. However, at this moment, Dumpling was already in a daze. She looked at him blankly, and only one thought was left in her mind. She was done for. Her dream of being a big sister was probably going to be ruined. At this thought, Dumpling finally couldn't help but purse her lips. She felt very wronged and disappointed. It turned out that all her previous efforts were in vain. She couldn't even reach Zichen's thigh. In terms of aura, she had lost directly. The point was, Zichen's aura was not inferior to hers. That's right. Mao Zhen's strength had increased, so his strength had naturally increased as well. Humph. Dumpling turned around angrily and hugged her two little arms. The bells on her head rang. Angry? She couldn't beat him in the past. After breaking through and becoming a crimson gold celestial phoenix, she had a better chance of winning. But how many days had it been since they started to enjoy this good life? Dumpling was overcome with sorrow and felt that she was really pitiful. Zichen looked at her small back, and a trace of surprise flashed across his face. But soon he understood something. His thin lips pursed, and a faint trace of helplessness flashed across his eyes. She really had a childish temper. Chu Luiyue looked at Zichen, and was also quite surprised. She had already guessed that Zichen must be up to something, when he didn't come out for so long. But she only thought that he was about to break through. She didn't expect him to directly transform into a human form. One had to know that in the world, only two great ancient mythical beasts could do this. Other than the crimson gold celestial phoenix, and the great phoenix dragon, no other magical beast could do this, no matter how outstanding they were. This miracle was most likely because Zichen had two wing bones of the great phoenix dragon in his body, and also fused with a part of the bloodline power. Of course, the most important person in this was Mao Zhen. If she hadn't used that skeleton to reconstruct her physical body and spur Zichen on, this probably wouldn't have happened. But no matter what, this was a good thing. Sensing her gaze, Zichen also looked over. He walked forward and stopped 3 steps away from Chu Luiyue, nodded and bowed. Greetings, master. Chu Luiyue's lips curved into a smile. Zichen, congratulations. Suddenly, a soft ball pounced on him. Dumpling hugged Chu Luiyue's leg tightly and looked up at her. Ayu likes me the most, doesn't she? She must be Ayu's favorite. Zichen listened with an indifferent expression. He didn't care about this kind of thing. Ever since Chu Luiyue helped him reconstruct his physical body and let him come back to life, he had already recognized Chu Luiyue as his only master. There was no need to say anything more. He would always be loyal to her. As for Dumpling, she had been with Chu Luiyue since she was young. She was young and had a pure and innocent personality, so it was inevitable that she would care about these things. Chu Luiyue didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She gently pinched her face and coaxed. Of course. Dumpling is so cute. Of course, I like Dumpling the most. As soon as she finished speaking, the temperature around her suddenly dropped. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows and smiled faintly. Oh, mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1774. Chu Liyue's back stiffened, and she subconsciously looked at Rong Xiao. Rong Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly. Even if he didn't say anything, Chu Liyue knew what he meant. It was just because of the words favorite just now. Chu Liyue had a headache. Dumpling was a crimson gold heavenly phoenix, her contracted magical beast. What was there to fight about? Now that the situation was so complicated, they were actually fighting about this. Chu Liyue felt very tired. She finally understood. Children were hard to coax. Men were also hard to coax. She coughed. I like all of them, ahem. I like all of them. As she spoke, she reached out and held Rong Xiao's hand, her fingertips gently rubbing his palm twice. It was a little itchy, Rong Xiao thought, but it was very delightful. The corners of his lips curled up, and he held her hand tightly. Only then did he stop. Dumpling didn't notice this. She just hugged Chu Liyue's thigh, pressed her face against it, and rubbed it intimately. I don't care. Anyway, you said that she liked it the most. She raised her face proudly, and raised her eyebrows provocatively at Zichen. When she grew taller, she would definitely take him in as her little brother. Zichen's eyes moved slightly, and then he looked away. The crowd in the square fell into a moment of dead silence, because of Zichen's appearance. But soon they started to clamor again. That's the legendary three-eyed eagle? Why did he transform into a human? It's really strange. Don't you feel that he has the aura of our great phoenix dragon race? Isn't that normal? Don't forget. Shangguanyu took the wing bone from his ancestor's skeleton and helped him reconstruct his body. Yes, that's true. In that case, the legendary three-eyed eagle and Mao Zhen actually used the same skeleton? It must be. After Mao Zhen's strength increased just now, the aura of the legendary three-eyed eagle also increased a lot. But if that's really the case, then wouldn't Mao Zhen be connected to the three-eyed eagle? All kinds of discussions could be heard from all directions. Many people's expressions changed when they realized the special relationship between Mao Zhen and Zichen. The legendary three-eyed eagle was considered to be of a higher level among the divine beasts, but it was still incomparable to them. Now that something like this had happened, it was truly strange. The more he thought about it, the more uncomfortable he felt. Mao Yang was so angry that he laughed. Elder Fushan, is this the person you chose to believe in? Such behavior is no different from betraying the clan. Even if he, Mao Yang, couldn't become the patriarch, it definitely wouldn't be Mao Zhen. Miao Fushan's expression was solemn, but he didn't say anything. Actually, he could roughly guess why Mao Zhen would do this. He had no other choice but to take this path. If the great phoenix dragon wanted to reconstruct its physical body, it had to use the remains of its own kind. Otherwise, it would never succeed. Other than asking Shangguanyu for help, what else could he do? As it turned out, it was indeed effective. It was a pity that the legendary three-eyed eagle would cause trouble. It was almost impossible for the people in the clan to accept this. Mao Zhen, what else do you have to say? Mao Fushan asked. Mao Zhen smiled and looked at Mao Yang. I just said that I came back this time to take back what belongs to me, the power of my bloodline, and the position of the patriarch. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone was shocked. Mao Zhen was too presumptuous. He actually said that he wanted to take the position of the patriarch. Mao Yang was still here. Mao Yang had already expected him to say this. He couldn't help but sneer. Mao Zhen, this is your real goal, right? The position of the patriarch. Why don't you take a look and see if you're worthy? Even if Mao Zhen proved that he had snatched a part of his bloodline power back then, so what? Mao Zhen couldn't explain the deaths of the 7 clan members no matter what. He couldn't produce the strongest evidence, and this matter would at most become an unjust case. Mao Zhen could pull him down from the position of the patriarch, but he couldn't take it himself. Mao Fushan also shook his head. Mao Zhen, your request is indeed too much. Back then, Mao Zhen was indeed the recognized successor of the patriarch. However, many things happened later, and in the end, Mao Yang became the patriarch. Now, Mao Yang couldn't keep his position as the patriarch. If Mao Zhen could clear up all the misunderstandings and prove his innocence, he might be able to replace him. However, the key was that he couldn't explain everything now. More importantly, He had an extremely special relationship with the legendary three-eyed eagle. Just this alone was enough to make the elders agree to let him become the patriarch. The Great Phoenix Dragon clan had a total of 9 elders, and they had the right to decide many things in the clan. If he wanted to become the patriarch, he had to get the unanimous consent of the 9 elders. Mao Zhan couldn't pass this hurdle alone. Mao Zhan, however, laughed. Elder Fushan, until now, you still haven't asked why Mao Yang attacked me back then? Mao Fushan was stunned. What happened just now was too shocking, and he indeed didn't have time to ask this question. He looked at Mao Yang suspiciously. Mao Yang and Mao Zhan didn't seem to have an open conflict in the past. He always thought that it was because Mao Zhan was too outstanding that Mao Yang was jealous and ruthless. Could it be that there was another reason behind this? Mao Yang's body tensed up, but his heart gradually sank. Mao Zhan dared to say this. Didn't that mean that thing was still on him? But how was that possible? Mao Zhan's physical body was destroyed back then. Even if his soul wasn't destroyed, it should be impossible for him to continue keeping that thing. But now, Mao Zhan seemed to be quite confident. Mao Yang's mind raced. Could it be that Mao Zhan was lying to him? Mao Fushan asked. Mao Yang, do you have anything to say about this matter? This time, he didn't call him patriarch, but directly called Mao Yang by his name. Many people quickly exchanged glances. It seemed that Elder Fushan didn't intend to recognize Mao Yang as the patriarch anymore. When Mao Yang heard this, the corners of his eyes twitched violently. He suppressed the surging emotions in his heart and sneered sarcastically. If you want to condemn someone, why worry about the pretext? Elder Fushan, since you don't believe me, why ask again? I think you might as well ask Mao Zhan directly. Let's see what kind of answer he can give. Mao Zhan laughed. Mao Yang, since you don't want to say it, then I'll say it. He took a step forward, and the aura around him suddenly fluctuated violently. Then, a totem appeared between his eyebrows. At the same time, a purple-gold stream of light gushed out from the totem, and then behind him, it transformed into a huge great phoenix dragon. Roar! An indescribable pressure that seemed to come from ancient times silently descended. Mao Fushan's expression changed. The might of the ancestors. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1775. In an instant, the aura was so powerful that it shook the heavens and earth. The great Phoenix Dragon tribe members in the square changed their expressions and knelt down. Welcome, ancestor. In the blink of an eye, everyone in the square had knelt down. Including Miao Fushan and the rest, they all knelt down respectfully. Only Mao Yang's face was filled with shock and horror as he stared at the giant phantom that had suddenly appeared. His mind was blank. Ancestor. This was the power of the ancestor. The ancestor of the great Phoenix Dragon tribe was naturally no longer around. However, that ancestor had purposely left behind an aura in the Great Void Temple to protect the tribe. When the clansmen entered the Great Void Temple, they would feel this faintly discernible aura and pressure. Therefore, they were very familiar with this. It was precisely because of this that as soon as the illusory figure appeared, its vast aura suffused the surroundings and instantly caused everyone present to submit to it. Mao Yang's legs trembled, and a sense of emptiness surged around him. He was on the verge of collapse, as if he could not stand and fall to the ground at any time. He was well aware of what the scene before him meant. The ancestor's inheritance was indeed still in Mao Zhan's body, and looking at the situation, Mao Zhan might have completely comprehended it. How could this be? How could this be? Mao Zhan raised her eyebrows and looked at Mao Yang. Mao Yang, why didn't you kneel when you saw the Taizu? Mao Yang suddenly regained his senses, and his face turned pale. Before he could react, the image of the great phoenix dragon suddenly roared towards the sky. Roar! An extremely heavy force pressed down on Mao Yang's shoulder. Plop! His body swayed, and he knelt heavily on the ground. There was a muffled sound. At the same time, there was the sound of bones cracking. The force was so strong that it directly smashed Mao Yang's knee into the ground, and the surrounding cracks spread. His body trembled even more violently, and his face turned even paler. The ancestor's power was indeed not to be underestimated. With just this, The bones in his knee were directly broken. When everyone heard this sound, they all looked over. When they saw Mao Yang's current sorry state, they had different expressions. Who would have thought that clan leader Mao Yang, who had always been glorious and honorable, would actually be in such a difficult situation one day? The might of the ancestors descended and directly punished Mao Yang. This time, everyone was even more afraid to approach him, and no one dared to speak up for him. Although the patriarch's status in the clan was extremely high, the current situation was special. Mao Yang had obviously used dishonorable means to seize a portion of Mao Zhen's bloodline power and use it to ascend to the position of patriarch. Just this point alone was enough for the 9 elders to join hands and remove him from the position of clan leader. Not to mention, the might of the ancestors had also descended. Of course, they were led by their ancestors. Mao Zhen looked at Miao Fushan and the others. Elders, please get up first. I still need all of you to be present as witnesses for the rest of the events. Hearing his words, the various elders, including Miao Fushan, first looked at each other a few times before standing up uneasily. It wasn't that they were too cowardly, but that too many things had happened today, and it was too horrifying. No one would believe it even if he told others about it. In the end, they focused their gazes on Miao Fushan. He was the most senior existence here, and his words carried the most weight. It was naturally best for him to step forward. Although Miao Fushan looked calm on the surface, his heart was in turmoil. After some thought, he stepped forward and clasped his hands at Mao Zhen. Of course, this bow was for the phantom of the ancestors above Mao Zhen's head. After bowing respectfully, Miao Fushan looked at Mao Zhen again. He had already guessed something in his heart, but he didn't dare to be sure. Mao Zhen, how did you summon the might of the ancestors? Miao Fushan spoke very slowly. His question was very clear and cautious. Everyone pricked up their ears, because this was what they were most curious about. After all, no one had ever done this in 10,000 years. Now that Mao Zhen had done it, how could they not be shocked? Mao Zhen laughed and said in a clear voice, Elder Fushan, this is the question I asked you before. Back then, the most important reason why Mao Yang spent so much effort and spared no expense to kill me was that I obtained the inheritance of the ancestors at the Thousand Summit. Countless people sucked in a cold breath. The inheritance of the ancestors. For so many years, no one in the Great Phoenix Dragon race had obtained it. But they didn't expect that Mao Zhen had already. Miao Fushan was also taken aback and subconsciously asked, What did you say? Back then, you obtained the inheritance of the ancestors at the Thousand Summit. Mao Zhen smiled and said nothing. But this was equivalent to admitting it. In fact, even if he didn't say it, everyone knew that it was true. In an instant, countless images appeared in Miao Fushan's mind. It was as if there was a string that finally connected those fragments together. No wonder Mao Yang wanted to kill him. No wonder he could escape from the desperate situation back then and hide in the coiling dragon pillar for 1,000 years. No wonder he could survive 1,000 years without being defeated, even though he only had a soul. Now, there was an explanation for all of this. He had the inheritance of the ancestors. Mao Zhen, he was the heir chosen by the ancestors. But why didn't we know about this, only Mao Yang? Miao Fushan was puzzled. Under normal circumstances, the people of the race wouldn't say what inheritance they obtained from the coiling dragon pillar, and no one would ask about it in detail. But Mao Zhen's situation, he should have said it directly. If he had said it back then, the position of the patriarch would have fallen into his hands. How could he have given Mao Yang the chance to cause so much trouble? Mao Zhen laughed self-deprecatingly. This is really my fault. I was too arrogant back then, and didn't have enough vigilance. I can only say that I deserved to suffer such a big loss. Back then, he was the pride of the race, and was incomparably arrogant. After obtaining the inheritance of the ancestors, this pride turned into arrogance. He didn't say this immediately, only wanting to wait until he comprehended the inheritance of the ancestors before announcing it. However, before he could wait for that day, Mao Yang had already set up a series of schemes to frame him. At that time, he wasn't prepared at all. By the time he realized that something was wrong and wanted to counterattack, it was already too late. This delay lasted for 1,000 years. He looked at Mao Yang. The latter was already kneeling on the ground, his face ashen. Nothing could prove everything more than this. This time, he was really finished. Mao Zhen walked forward and stood in front of Mao Yang, looking down at him. Mao Yang, you've stolen the power of my bloodline and the position of the patriarch for many years. Now it's time to return it, right? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1776. Mao Yang subconsciously struggled to get up, but that heavy and terrifying pressure firmly suppressed him, rendering him unable to move. Deep despair and fear surged from the bottom of his heart. Intense emotions surged in his chest, finally causing his chest to tremble, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Mao Zhen waved his sleeve, and a purple-gold stream of light formed a barrier in front of him. Mao Yang's blood splashed on it, and quickly burned away. Don't dirty my clothes. Mao Zhen's expression was indifferent, his voice cold. Mao Yang felt even more resentful and humiliated. His lips trembled, but he could not say a word, only spitting out a few more mouthfuls of blood. After this torment, his face was as pale as a ghost, and he was on the verge of death. Mao Zhen looked at Mao Fushan and the several elders standing next to him. Since I have inherited the ancestors' legacy, I will naturally replace Mao Yang as the patriarch. I wonder if any of the elders have any objections? After a brief silence, Mao Fushan spoke first. Since the ancestor has already made the decision, we will naturally comply. The other elders nodded in agreement after hearing his words. We have no objections. This was not because they had submitted to Mao Zhen's pressure, but because they were sincere. In the past, they had misunderstood Mao Zhen, but now, everything in front of them was enough to prove Mao Zhen's innocence. Even if he had not inherited the ancestors' legacy, he was absolutely qualified. In all these years, no one had truly surpassed Mao Zhen. He was also the #1 genius and expert in the clan. It was natural for him to be the patriarch. After a moment of silence, the people kneeling in the square all saluted and shouted, "Congratulations, patriarch!" Their shouts shook the heavens, their momentum grand. Most people had excited expressions on their faces. The initial shock and confusion had completely dissipated. Only joy and excitement remained. How could they not be happy? Mao Yang had done all kinds of evil. Back then, he had used insidious methods to seize the patriarch's position. He was the shame of the entire clan. Now that he had been demoted, it was reasonable. But Mao Zhen had not only clarified the truth of that year, but also, he had inherited the ancestors' legacy. Such a person as the patriarch was naturally different. Even if he had a special relationship with the legendary three-eyed eagle, it was nothing compared to the recognition of the ancestor. Thinking about it, it made sense why Mao Zhen was able to hide in the coiling dragon pillar for so many years. Wasn't it all because of the ancestor's favor? There was nothing to dispute about this matter. Hearing the almost boiling cheers of celebration, Mao Yang rolled his eyes and fainted. Mao Zhen gestured with his hand, and the square quickly quieted down. Chu Luiyue was secretly amazed. That was exactly what the saying, strict obedience to orders and prohibitions. Mao Zhen had just returned, and she had already received so much support from everyone. She was indeed extraordinary. She winked at Rong Xiao. This time, they had truly helped the right person by lending a helping hand. Rong Xiao's lips curved up, and he held her hand even tighter. This trip to Divine Dragon Island was indeed unexpected, but fortunately, it was more daunting than dangerous, and he even made a profit in the end. Being able to be on good terms with Mao Zhen was absolutely beneficial to them. This time, not only could they leave smoothly, but they could also be considered to have dealings with the Great Void Phoenix Dragon tribe in the future. With this layer of relationship, it would undoubtedly be much more convenient to deal with many things in the future. Mao Zhen said to an elder next to him, "Wake him up." The elder responded and quickly walked forward. He grabbed Mao Yang's collar and gave him 2 resounding slaps without saying a word. Mao Yang's face quickly swelled up, and he was also awakened by the sharp pain. He opened his eyes angrily and saw Mao Zhen. and the elder in front of him, who was about to give him a third slap. He immediately understood. He was still here. In an instant, the anger and hatred in his heart turned into panic and fear. He subconsciously shrank back, but his collar was grabbed tightly, and he could not move at all. At this time, he had lost both of his arms, and he had no strength to resist. Mao Zhen smiled. But to Mao Yang, this smile was no different from a devil's. Mao Yang, I know you want a clean death, but how can there be so many things in this world? Mao Yang immediately had an ominous premonition. You, what are you doing? He asked anxiously and hurriedly. Mao Zhen raised his hand. A piece of purple gold scale armor suddenly appeared in his palm. Then, a dazzling light suddenly flew out from between his eyebrows. It enveloped Mao Yang. The elder immediately let go of his hand and took a few steps back. Mao Yang's body began to roll on the ground, as if he was enduring great pain. Soon his body began to change. Soon he actually returned to his true form. Roar. Mao Yang's roar was filled with deep panic and fear. Mao Zhen said indifferently, Don't worry, I won't directly take your life. I just want to seek justice for the 7 of my clansmen. With that, the scale armor in his palm instantly flew out. Chi chi chi. An ear-piercing sound suddenly rang out. Mao Yang's body began to roll even more crazily. Soon, scales dripping with blood fell on the ground. Some were still attached to skin and flesh, looking very bloody and terrifying. Mao Zhen was going to skin him alive. This kind of method could be said to be ruthless. But thinking about the things that Mao Yang had done, it made people feel that this was what he should bear. Such a person indeed deserved to be cut into pieces. Needless to say, he had framed Mao Zhen to such an extent. This was even considered a light punishment for him. Mao Yang's roar gradually became softer, as if he had lost the strength to roll, and was on the verge of death. Only when the last dragon scale on his body was scraped off did Mao Zhen say, Send him to 7 Lotus Peak and give him the last medicine. Be sure to let him recover as soon as possible. Yes. Mao Yang was shocked. Was Mao Zhen planning to repeatedly torture him like this? As if to confirm his guess, Mao Zhen looked at him and raised his lips without a smile. Mao Yang, what's the hurry? This is just the beginning. Digression. In 2 hours, mobile users please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1777. Mao Yang's eyes widened. His scarlet eyes were filled with hatred and madness. Mao Zhen, kill me if you want. If you drag this out, aren't you afraid of trouble? Mao Zhen looked at him strangely. You think too highly of yourself. Mao Yang's chest tightened, and he almost couldn't breathe. Chu Liyue couldn't help but laugh. Not only was Mao Zhen powerful, but he was also good at talking. What Mao Yang hated the most was that he was weaker than Mao Zhen. He had always seen Mao Zhen as a strong opponent, but he didn't think much of him. Nothing could represent a person's contempt more than indifference. There was nothing that could deal a greater blow to Mao Yang than this sentence. Sure enough, Mao Yang became agitated and wanted to continue. However, he was no different from a piece of trash. He couldn't do anything even if he wanted to. In the end, he fell to the ground and lay there in a sorry state, covered in blood. Mao Zhen waved his hand. The people below quickly came forward and took Mao Yang away. Until he was dragged away, the square was still filled with the strong smell of blood. Looking at the mess on the ground, everyone involuntarily quietened down. Their expressions were complicated. Too many things had happened on this day. The clan had undergone a drastic change. It was as if heaven and earth had been turned upside down. Mao Fushan looked at Rong Xiu and Chu Liyue and sighed in his heart. Who would have thought that all this was because of the arrival of these 2 people? If they hadn't barged into Divine Dragon Island, Mao Yang wouldn't have imprisoned them on 7 Lotus Mountain. They wouldn't have found the opportunity to enter the coiling dragon pillar of the Great Void Temple and help Mao Zhen reconstruct his body. All these things were actually caused by these 2 people. After hesitating for a moment, he spoke. Clan leader, since everything has come to an end, then, what do you plan to do with these people? Since Mao Zhen had become the clan leader, their attitude towards these people was naturally different from before. They were much more polite and gentle. Mao Zhen also sensed his gaze and laughed. Of course, I'll send them off. He still remembered the deal he made with Rong Xiao. Now that he had taken back everything that belonged to him, he naturally had to fulfill the demands of Rong Xiao. Hearing this, Miao Fushan and the others were surprised. That's it. They thought that Rong Xiao and the others would definitely take this opportunity to make a lot of requests. In the end, they just wanted to leave this place in peace? Rong Xiao's lips curved up slightly. Congratulations, Senior Mao Zhen. Logically speaking, we should celebrate for you. But we have been delayed here for too long. It is time for us to go back. Mao Zhen walked over and smiled. What are you talking about? I should be the one thanking you. If it weren't for your help, I would still be stuck in the coiling dragon pillar. He was truly grateful. Those 1,000 years were not easy for him. In the past, just like his clansmen, he despised the human race and thought that they were all treacherous and sinister people. But after this, he had a profound change in his view of this point. At the very least, he valued and respected Rong Xiao and Sheng Guanyu very much. He glanced at Dumpling. Dumpling immediately put her hands on her waist and raised her small face. Why are you looking at me? Although the Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix and the Great Phoenix Dragon had never gotten along, she was not afraid at all. Chu Luiyue did not know whether to laugh or cry as she pulled Dumpling back. She could feel that Mao Zhen did not have any ill intentions. Not only was Mao Zhen not angry, but she could not help but laugh. Ha ha ha. This little fellow is young, but her temper is not small. Don't worry. Since your master has helped me this time, the entire Great Void Phoenix Dragon tribe will not do anything to you. Dumpling blinked a few times. After confirming that the other party's tone was sincere, she heaved a sigh of relief and patted her chest gently. Phew, that's more like it. She was with Ayu. Mao Zhen's smile deepened. She looked at Dumpling and felt a little fond of her. Yizhao is really lucky. Dumpling's talent was obviously very outstanding. Her soft and cute appearance was especially lovable. The Great Phoenix Dragon clan did not have such luck. Hearing him praise her, Tuanzi couldn't help but grin happily. Of course, Grandpa Patriarch and the others doted on her a lot. Mao Zhen looked at her round, white, and tender little face. She wanted to go up and pinch it, but she held back in the end. Let's go. I'll personally send you out. Outside Divine Dragon Island, time passed exceptionally slowly. Every minute and every second was more and more unbearable for Sheng Guanjing and the others who were waiting. Nan Su Huai stared at the teleportation formation with a grave expression and frowned. Is there still no movement? Sheng Guanjing could not help but ask. Nan Su Huai shook his head. No. But it's been so long. Sheng Guanjing pinched the bridge of his nose. His expression was somewhat haggard. During this period of time, they had been waiting patiently. They did not dare to relax in the slightest, afraid that they would miss something. However, the teleportation formation was still calm. Gradually, they began to feel anxious. Chuning comforted. Although the teleportation formation did not react, Divine Dragon Island did not send anyone over. They should still be safe. If the Great Phoenix Dragon clan discovered that something was wrong, they would definitely not sit idly by. Nan Su Huai nodded. No news is good news. Let's wait a little longer. Sheng Guanjing and Chu Ning could only nod in agreement. At the exit of Divine Dragon Island's barrier, Mao Zhen personally sent Rong Xiao and the others here. I'll stop here for today. Mao Zhen smiled. There are still some things to deal with in the clan. At this time, I really can't leave. Rong Xiao and Chu Luiyue nodded to express their understanding. The Thousand Summit had just ended, and Mao Zhen had just taken the position of patriarch. There were indeed many things to do. Senior Mao Zhen is too polite. It's already beyond our expectations that you can personally send us off, said Rong Xiao with a smile. Mao Zhen was now the patriarch, and his status was very different. The fact that he was willing to personally send them off was to express his attitude. In this way, even if some people in the Great Phoenix Dragon clan were still dissatisfied with them, they would greatly restrain themselves in the future. To them, this was undoubtedly extremely beneficial. Mao Zhen shook his head and sighed. You have helped me a lot. This small matter is really not much of a reward. If you encounter any trouble in the future, just say the word. I Maozhen will definitely do my best. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat. This sentence was a serious promise. This meant that they would have the Great Void Phoenix Dragon as their backer in the future. Rongxiu's lips curved slightly. Actually, there's something I really want to trouble you with. Maozhen waved his hand. Just say it. Rongxiu suddenly took out a gold-stamped invitation card and handed it over. In half a month's time, you and I will be married. At that time, I hope that Senior Maozhen will come. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1778. Chu Liyue. The wedding is in half a month. Why didn't she know about it? And this invitation card? When did he prepare it? He actually took it out so casually. Chu Liyue was dumbfounded. Maozhen directly took the invitation card. As soon as it entered her hand, a trace of surprise flashed across her eyes. This invitation card was actually made of ink brocade paper. Ink brocade paper was an extremely precious rice paper. It was famous because of its rare materials, complicated craftsmanship, and low production. It was also because of these reasons that the price of ink brocade paper was extremely expensive. But even so, ink brocade paper was still extremely popular, causing people to scramble for it like a flock of ducks. This was because the ink brocade paper was extremely thin, but it was very tough. The sharp tip of a knife could not cut it, and ice, water, and fire could not destroy it. As long as it was well preserved, it could survive for tens of thousands of years. Not to mention ordinary people. Even the first-rate families in the Divine Ruins world might not have much of it. However, such precious ink brocade paper was actually used by Rongxiu to make a wedding invitation card. She really didn't know if she should say that he was too extravagant or that he valued this wedding too much. And the person who was about to marry him. Maozhen carefully looked at the invitation card, then nodded with a smile. Don't worry, when the time comes, I will definitely prepare a generous gift and personally congratulate you. Rongxiu's smile deepened. Then you and I will wait for your arrival. As soon as the two of them walked out of the Divine Dragon Island's barrier, Chu Liyue grabbed Rongxiu's hand. Then what's with the invitation card? The wedding is in half a month. Why didn't I know anything about it before? Rongxiu smiled and let her hold his wrist. His voice was low and gentle. The wedding date was decided by me just now. In fact, this date has been postponed several times. This time, I don't want to postpone it anymore. Half a month later, we will return to the Yuntian Tower and get married immediately. Although his voice was as gentle and soft as usual, his tone was very firm. Obviously, he had made up his mind on this matter. Looking at his deep and calm pair of phoenix eyes, Chu Liyue was suddenly stunned. She suddenly couldn't bring herself to ask the rest of the questions. Yes, Rongxiu had already mentioned this matter too many times. It was just that they didn't seem to have the right time and opportunity, thinking it had been too long. My father. Don't worry. I've already sent someone to invite them. They should be arriving at the Cloud Heaven Tower soon. In addition, your friends and subordinates will also go with you to the Cloud Heaven Tower. Chu Liyue paused. Rongxiu's lips curved up as he patiently explained. Mu Hongyu and the rest will come. Also, Sini will probably inform the 13 Yu guards after receiving the news. Chu Liyue widened her eyes slightly and said after a while, Yai. From then on, Rongxiu had been traveling with her. Thinking about it, these things should have been done before that. Rongxiu raised his eyebrows and didn't deny it. He had originally planned to bring Chu Liyue back from the Phoenix Mountain and wait for everything to be ready before getting married. However, too many accidents had happened later, so it had been delayed until now. Do you blame me for not discussing it with you before? Rongxiu lowered his voice. But I don't want to wait any longer. Chu Liyue's heart suddenly seemed to have been hit by something. Her eyes were slightly hot as she nodded with a smile. Me too. Let's go home. Look, someone's coming. Shang Guanjing suddenly noticed something and looked up. Suddenly his eyes narrowed. The two figures in front. Why do they look so familiar? That's Rongxiu and Yuer. Nan Sohuai followed his line of sight and was pleasantly surprised. Although Chu Ning's cultivation realm was low, he had an indestructible divine body, so his eyesight was not bad. He looked over as well, and immediately became excited. It's indeed you earned them. Shang Guanjing had already rushed forward. Nansu Huai looked back at the Xian formation and waved his sleeve, causing the light to disperse. Then, he and Chu Ning also followed. You are. Shang Guanjing was the fastest and soon shortened the distance between them. Chu Luyue and Rong Xiu also noticed them, and immediately sped up. Taizu. Father. Master. Previously, the people of Divine Dragon Island had rejected them outside, and Dumpling had said a lot, so she guessed that they should still be waiting outside. As expected, hearing her voice, the few of them were overjoyed. Shang Guanjing went forward and couldn't hide his excitement. He first looked up and down at Chu Luyue. How are you? Did you get hurt on Divine Dragon Island? They didn't do anything to you, right? Chu Luyue felt warm in her heart, and said with a smile, Taizu, don't worry. Don't you see that I'm fine? As she said that, she deliberately turned half a circle, so that the few of them could see clearly. Actually, she did suffer a little injury on Divine Dragon Island, but those were not worth mentioning. Coupled with her strong recovery ability, there were almost no scars on her body at this time. Moreover, the situation inside was also quite good. Shang Guanjing saw that her complexion was indeed good, and was relieved. That's good, that's good. Nansu Huai and Chu Ning also rushed over at this time. Nansu Huai first looked at Chu Luyue, and then looked at Rong Xiu. Are you all right? Rong Xiu nodded. Only then did Nansu Huai's hanging heart calm down. As long as he was here, there was no need to worry. How did you come out? Chu Ning asked. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1779. It's a long story. Let's return to the Yuntian Tower first, and talk about it on the way. Chu Luyue said. Shang Guanjing and the others saw that she and Rong Xiu seemed to be in good condition, so they nodded in agreement. The group went on their way back to the Yuntian Tower. On the way, Chu Luyue briefly told them what had happened during this period of time. That's what happened. In the process of speaking, Chu Luyue tried her best to be calm, and left out many things. However, after she finished speaking, Shang Guanjing and the other two were still deeply shocked. After a short silence, the three of them asked in unison, You met the great phoenix dragon's genius Mao Zhen 1,000 years ago, and even helped him reconstruct his body. Not only was the great phoenix dragon's clan leader, Mao Yang, stripped of his position, but he was also crippled. You have a relationship with the great phoenix dragon's new clan leader, and he personally sent you out. It was no wonder that the three of them had so many questions. These things were too shocking. After all, the three of them had seen many big scenes. The fact that they had such a big reaction showed how terrifying the impact of these things was. But in reality, their reactions were very normal. Any one of the things that Chu Luyue said just now would cause a huge uproar in the Divine Ruins world. However, when she told Rong Xiu about these things, her expression was too calm. It almost made people think that they did not take those things to heart. Faced with their questions, Chu Luyue did not know whether to laugh or cry. However, she patiently explained them one by one. What I said just now is true. Otherwise, how could we leave Divine Dragon Island unscathed? The few of them were speechless and looked at each other. That was true. No matter how strong the two of them were, it was impossible for them to pass through the Divine Dragon Island's layers of barriers without anyone noticing. After a moment of silence, Nansu Huai could not help but shake his head and smile. I see. You guys have already thought of a way to leave. That's why you didn't come back through the teleportation formation. Chu Luyue smiled apologetically. I'm sorry to have worried you, Master. Nansu Huai laughed, his face full of pride. What are you talking about? Master is happy for you. Are you or is indeed outstanding? Was this something an ordinary person could do? Only the two of them could work together perfectly to achieve such a result. If this matter were to spread out, who knew how many jaws would drop, and how many people would be secretly envious and amazed? Nansu Huai was truly happy. After so many years, Yuer had also become stronger and stronger. Since the matter with the great phoenix dragon has been settled, and you are friends with Mao Zhen, you don't have to worry about the great phoenix dragon anymore. This could be considered a blessing in disguise. Shang Guanjing lamented as he looked at the two of them. This was definitely not an exaggeration, but an absolute fact. One had to know that in the world, there were countless sects and clans that wanted to climb up to the great phoenix dragon. Their strength was even more powerful than those first-rate families. However, the great phoenix dragon was an ancient divine beast. Like the crimson gold heavenly phoenix, it had always been extremely arrogant. It had never placed the human race in its eyes, nor did it have any dealings with them. These years, the great phoenix dragon's situation was slightly better, but it was obviously just a superficial relationship. There was no one who had close dealings with these two clans openly and fairly. Now, Chu Luyue and Rong Xiu had obviously succeeded in building a relationship with Mao Zhen. Moreover, it was a relationship that the other party was willing to help. How could they not be shocked? How could they not be happy? Chu Luyue smiled and nodded. In fact, she felt the same way. Originally, because of Dumpling, she had always been biased against the great phoenix dragon clan. She had never thought that she could coexist peacefully with the great phoenix dragon clan. Moreover, the other party was the clan leader. It was already very difficult for an ordinary person to have a relationship with one of the two clans. Now, she had miraculously maintained a good relationship with both clans. Moreover, the two divine beasts she had contracted also had extremely close relations with the two clans. This was indeed not something that could be explained by the word luck. After the three of them calmed down a little, Chu Luyue said, "By the way, there's another important matter when we return to the Yuntian Tower this time." At this point she paused. Shang Guanjing and the other two looked over. Chu Luyue's red lips curled up slightly, and a faint blush appeared on her cheeks. Rong Xiu held her hand and smiled. "You and I have decided to get married directly when we return this time." The Nan clan, the entire mountain peak, and the entire courtyard were cold and cheerless. The atmosphere was cold and stagnant, almost suffocating. Especially when they were close to the inner courtyard, this feeling became stronger. The servants were cautious, and even their breathing became cautious. This situation had been going on for a month. Ever since the clan leader brought the eldest young master and the second young miss back, it had been like this. Although the higher-ups had blocked the news, many people in the clan still vaguely guessed something. The eldest young master and the second young miss seemed to have suffered extremely serious injuries outside before returning. On the first day they arrived at the Nan clan, they called over all the celestial physicians in the clan. Several celestial physicians stayed in the room for 2 days and 2 nights. It was not until the morning of the third day that the elders came out one after another. However, their expressions were not very good. Some people secretly speculated that the two's situation this time was not optimistic. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1780. In the room, Nanny leaned against the head of the bed with a pale face. She was covered with a thick brocade quilt, and her eyes were empty as she stared blankly ahead. She looked like she had lost her soul. Countless images flashed through her mind, but they also seemed to be blank. Nothing was left behind, only a blurry mass. A maidservant pushed open the door and came in, carefully handing over a small bowl made of blue and white bone. "Second miss, it's time to drink your medicine, ah." Before she could finish her sentence, Nanny suddenly pulled out a whip from under the bed and ruthlessly whipped the maidservant's head. The servant girl couldn't dodge in time and was hit directly. A long scar extended from her scalp all the way to the corner of her mouth, easily cutting through her delicate and young face. Flesh and blood rolled, and the stench was horrifying. The servant girl screamed in pain, and the small bowl in her hand fell to the ground, shattering into pieces. She fell to the ground, and a few more shards pierced into her palm, causing her to bleed profusely. The pain was getting worse. She looked up in panic and fear, and saw that Nanny had looked over at some point. Her eyes were scarlet and terrifying, as sinister as a ghost. It was as if she wanted to cut her into pieces. The servant girl trembled violently, and immediately stopped crying. She knelt on the ground and cried and begged. "Second miss, I know my mistake. I know my mistake." Actually, she really didn't know what she had done wrong to anger Second Mississippi. But Second Miss was angry, and it was her fault. During this period of time, there had been rumors in the family that Second Miss's temperament had changed drastically after she returned. In the past, she was just spoiled and willful, but now, she had become unpredictable, irritable, and would take people's lives at the drop of a hat. In the months since she returned, 3 servants had already died in her hands. As for those who were injured, there were countless. She was afraid that she would be the one to be killed, so she ignored the pain on her body and desperately admitted her mistake to beg for mercy. But this servant girl didn't know that the more she acted like this, the worse Nan Yi's mood became. The blood in Nan Yi's eyes gathered rapidly, and she almost went crazy. "It's so noisy. Damn it." She clenched the whip in her hand and was about to strike again when the door was pushed open. Suddenly, a figure walked over quickly. It was Nan Yifan. Nan Yi stopped what she was doing. Nan Yifan quickly sized up the situation in the room, his brows furrowed. When he was walking outside just now, he heard a scream coming from inside the house. He immediately guessed that Nan Yi must have made a fuss again. True enough. He waved his hand at the maidservant. "You can leave first. Recuperate well during this period of time. There's no need to serve me again." The maidservant immediately felt as if she had been pardoned and thanked him profusely before leaving. The room quickly quieted down again, leaving only a mess on the floor. Anger surged in Nan Yifan's chest and abdomen. When are you going to stop? 1 or 2 days would have been fine, but it had already been a month. It hasn't stopped yet. The entire Nan family was talking about this, and it was obvious that they were very dissatisfied with Nan Yi. Although Nan Yi was the second miss of the family, it didn't mean that she could do whatever she wanted in the Nan family. One had to know that he didn't have the final say in the Nan family. The elders and seniors were usually very polite to him, but if he did something wrong, he would also be punished. Not to mention Nan Yi. If this continued, how was he going to explain to the Nan family? Hearing the faint reprimand in his words, Nan Yi's eyes reddened and tears fell. She didn't argue and just lowered her head, allowing her tears to fall on the brocade quilt. Seeing her like this, Nan Yifan's heart softened again. After all, she was the apple of his eye that he had doted on for so many years. How could his heart not ache? She used to be so proud, so it was normal for her to find it hard to accept the current situation. Nan Yifan sighed and walked over to sit by the bed. Be good. Give me the whip." Nan Yi paused for a moment before she slowly handed the whip over. Nan Yifan had only wanted to leave the whip for her to protect herself, but now he would rather send more people outside than continue to leave the whip to Nan Yi. After taking the whip, Nan Yifan patted her hand gently and said earnestly, "Don't worry. I know that you feel wronged and upset, but it's not a solution to go on like this, right? Those servants didn't do anything wrong in the first place. If you vent your anger on them, not only will it not help your condition at all, it will also cause the family to criticize you." He paused and a bitter expression appeared on his face. "You know your elder brother's situation. Unless there is a miracle, he will be crippled for the rest of his life. This matter, other than a celestial physician that I trust, no one else in the family knows about it. How dare he say it? He had groomed Nan Yuxing for so many years and spent so much effort. In the end, he was crippled just like that. Moreover, he only had this one son. This also meant that the position of the head of the family would have to be passed to someone else in the future. The Nan family was huge, and there were a total of 3 branches. The position of the head of the family was usually fought for by the people of these 3 branches. For so many years, he had groomed Nan Yuxing with all his might, hoping that he would become extremely outstanding. In this way, he would be able to pass the position to Nan Yuxing. If his bloodline couldn't make it, there would be plenty of people who wanted to replace him. There were countless people who secretly coveted the position of the head of the family. Of course, this was not what Nan Yifan wanted to see. Hearing this, Nan Yi's tears stopped. She wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes and looked up at Nan Yifan. There was anger and indignation on her face. Of course, the position of the head of the family could only belong to them. But very quickly, her face was covered with a layer of defeat. So what if she was angry? So what if she was indignant? The news that her elder brother's Yuan Meridian was crippled, and he had become a cripple, could be hidden for a while, but not forever. The people in the family would find out sooner or later. And the matter of her being mute, everyone thought that she was unwilling to speak because she was in a bad mood. But as time passed, they would definitely find out. At that time, the result would be even worse. And the culprit of all this was still living a carefree life. At that thought, Nan Yi held Nan Yifun's hand and looked at him anxiously. Nan Yifun immediately understood what she meant. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Don't think about this for now. You should recuperate first. Nan Yi flung his hand away as a desperate and strange smile appeared on her face. She had long guessed that her father did not intend to help them take revenge. He wanted them to swallow all the pain and torture. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1781. Nan Yifun felt a sharp pain in his heart when he saw the look in her eyes. He didn't want this to happen either. His own children were crippled and crippled. How could he not feel heartache and not want to avenge them? But the opponent was Rong Xiao. If they were in the right, he could still fight for it. But the truth was, most of the blame was on themselves. If Yi hadn't thought of snatching Rong Xiao from Shangguanyu at that time, if Yuxing hadn't provoked the other party time and time again in the god-slaying tomb, if they had immediately stopped when they sensed that something was wrong and stayed away from Rong Xiao and the rest, things wouldn't have turned out like this. But it was too late to say anything now. The air in the room seemed to have frozen. Nan Yi turned her head away and closed her eyes in despair. Obviously, she didn't want to continue talking to Nan Yifun. Nan Yifun felt very uncomfortable with such a resistant attitude. He had wanted to comfort her, but in the end they parted on bad terms. He knew that it was useless to say anything now. After looking at Nan Yi for a while, he stood up. He pulled the blanket over Nan Yi, wanting to cover her, but Nan Yi snatched it away. Her actions were crisp and full of resistance. Nan Yifun's hand hung awkwardly in the air. He glanced at Nan Yi and sighed in his heart. His fingers curled up. I will get someone to send another bowl of medicine over. If you don't like these servants, you can get someone else to do it. Don't do this again in the future. With that, he turned around and left. When he reached the door, Nan Yifun paused. He placed a hand on the door and said without turning back, I know you don't take Yuntian Tower seriously, but Rong Xiao is indeed someone you can't afford to offend. There are some things you will understand in the future. With that, he pushed the door open and left. After a while, Nanny opened her eyes. The room was so silent that it almost made her panic. She turned back to look at the door and frowned. She had never seen her father so afraid of anyone. Could it be that Rong Xiao was hiding some secrets? But wasn't he the holy son of the Yuntian Tower? Nanny was silent for a long time. A trace of struggle flashed through her eyes, but in the end, she still took out a green jade whistle. She placed the jade whistle next to her lips and blew hard. An extremely soft and sharp cry rang out. However, it also disappeared very quickly. Other than herself, almost no one else heard it. Even Nan Yifun, who had just left, did not notice. Nan Yifun put away the jade whistle and crossed his hands in front of him. He closed his eyes as if he was waiting for something. About a quarter of an hour later, someone came to deliver the medicine. Tuk-tuk. Second miss, your medicine is ready. I'll do it. A man's deep voice rang out, interrupting the servant's words and taking the decoction directly. The manservant was feeling nervous, but when he saw who it was, he was overjoyed. Greetings, Elder Luo Yen. Then this medicine. I'll make sure he drinks it. You can leave first. Sigh. Yes. Luo Yen had a high status, so the manservant naturally didn't dare to disobey his words. He didn't want to come at first. Who didn't know that most of the people who came to serve second miss recently had gotten into trouble? Now that there was someone helping, it couldn't be better. After bowing, the manservant left in a hurry. Luo Yen pushed the door open and entered. When Nan Yi saw him, a look of grievance appeared on her face and her tears fell again. Luo Yan's heart ached when he saw her like this. Why are you still so haggard? Is the medicine not effective? Because he was worried that it would arouse everyone's suspicions about her health. He had only come to see Nan Yi once since he returned. This was the second time. He thought that Nan Yi's health should be much better, but he didn't expect that after such a long time, there still didn't seem to be any improvement. Nan Yi shook her head. Luo Yan frowned even more and walked over to size Nan Yi up carefully. Actually, Nan Yi's injuries in the god-slaying tomb weren't fatal. Logically speaking, as long as she came back and recuperated, she should be able to recover. But after so long, Luo Yan looked at her red and swollen eyes and immediately understood something. Perhaps it was still the heart that was difficult to treat. Nan Yi used to be very lively. Now that she couldn't speak, it was normal that she couldn't get over it for a long time. He sent the medicine over. No matter what, the most important thing is to take good care of your health. Nan Yi nodded obediently and drank the medicine. The medicine was bitter, but her heart was even more bitter. Luo Yan's heart ached even more when he saw her obedient and silent appearance. Do you have something to say to me or? He had specially left that jade whistle for Nan Yi. As long as Nan Yi blew it, he would be able to sense it immediately, but others wouldn't be able to hear it. This was the first time Nan Yi had blown the whistle in the past month. Nan Yi nodded, took out a pen and paper, wrote a few lines, and handed it to Luo Yan. Luo Yan took the paper and looked at it carefully. Then, he was shocked and looked at Nan Yi with furrowed brows. No, I can't agree to it. With that, Luo Yan got up and was about to leave. You have to stay here and recuperate during this period of time. You can't go anywhere. Nan Yi tugged at his sleeve and whimpered. Her eyes were filled with pleading. Luo Yan stopped in his tracks. He turned back and met Nan Yi's tear-filled eyes. In the past, she often begged him for help like this. Every time he saw this pair of eyes that were very similar to her mother's, his heart would always soften. Even if she occasionally made a mistake, as long as she showed such an expression, he couldn't bear to scold her. But this time, Luo Yan sighed. This definitely won't do. Your injuries haven't healed yet. I can't agree to these things. Nan Yi slowly let go and suddenly smiled. Desolate and desperate. Luo Yan's heart seemed to have been hit hard by something. After a long pause, he finally said, Okay, I promise you. Nan Yi immediately looked up at him in surprise. In a moment of excitement, she pounced over and hugged Luo Yan's neck. She knew that at this time, the only person she could rely on was Uncle Luo Yan. Luo Yan's hand froze, but he quickly returned to normal and patted her back gently. Don't worry, I will protect you well. Nan Yifan naturally didn't know what was going on here. After leaving Nan Yi's place, he wanted to go back to the study to calm down. But halfway there, he turned around and went to Nan Yuxing's place. Nan Yuxing lived in one of the most noble courtyards in the entire Nan family. In the past, this place had always been bustling with people coming and going. But now it was cold and cheerless all the way. Other than the guards in charge of guarding, there was almost no one else here. Of course, this was because Nan Yifan had specially ordered that no one was allowed to approach this place and disturb Nan Yuxing's rest. He walked to the entrance of the courtyard. The two guards immediately bowed. Greetings, Patriarch. Nan Yifan nodded. How is eldest young master? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1782. The two guards looked at each other. My lord, everything is normal. Nan Yifan asked again. Did anyone come in the past 2 days? The two guards shook their heads. No one else came except for Elder Nan Yi. Elder Nan Yi was the celestial physician that Nan Yifan trusted the most. He was also the only one who knew about Nan Yuxing's condition, other than the people in the god-slaying tomb. After they returned, Nan Yifan handed Nan Yuxing to him. However, a month had passed. Although Nan Yuxing's external injuries had mostly healed, there was still no improvement on his internal injuries. It was difficult to repair a damaged Yuan meridian. Nan Yifan lifted his foot and walked inside. It was noon and the sun was shining brightly. Nan Yifan pushed the door open and entered without knocking. As soon as he entered, a strong and bitter smell of medicine rushed to his nose, almost suffocating him. Nan Yifan frowned and looked around. The windows were all locked, and the whole room looked gloomy. The faint smell of blood mixed with the bitter smell of medicine was very uncomfortable. Sunlight poured in through the door and tore apart the dead silence, but it could not dispel the aura of death. Nan Yifan walked in. Walking around the screen, he saw Nan Yuxing lying on the bed. Nan Yuxing's condition was worse than Nan Yi's. At this moment, he was lying on the bed with his eyes closed. His face was pale and haggard. His face was unshaven, and his lips were cracked. Blood vessels could be seen vaguely. His originally handsome face was now a sickly color, and his cheeks were deeply sunken. His breath was weak, like an old man with one foot in the grave. There was no trace of the arrogance of the young master of the Nan family. Hearing Nan Yifan's voice, Nan Yuxing's eyes moved, but he did not open them. Nan Yifan walked over and stood by the bed. He stared at him for a long time before saying, "Do you plan to continue like this?" Nan Yuxing's eyelashes fluttered, and he finally opened his eyes with difficulty. However, he did not look at Nan Yifan. He just stared at the ceiling. His eyes were dead and filled with despair and mockery. After a long while he spoke with a hoarse voice. "What else can I do?" He was already crippled. His originally limitless future had now turned into a bottomless abyss. What was the point of living? In this world, there was nothing that could destroy a person's willpower more than falling from the clouds into a quagmire. Nan Yuxing was the same. Ever since he was young, he had been the pride of the heavens, and had been chased by everyone, enjoying the limelight. In a single night he had become a cripple. Everything that had happened in the past had become a thing of the past. How could he bear it? Nan Yifan paused. "Elder Nan Yi has been searching for a way to help you recover your Yuan meridian." Nan Yuxing suddenly laughed. His voice was extremely soft and sarcastic. "Father, if Elder Nan Yi really has a way, why would he wait until now?" No one knew the state of his body better than he did. His Yuan meridian was completely broken and could not be repaired. Most of the things he said were just words of comfort. In reality, his heart was already dead. Nan Yifan was at a loss for words. He could tell that this was a huge blow to Nan Yuxing. If they didn't have a feasible solution, Nan Yuxing might not be able to survive. The room was silent. Nan Yuxing suddenly asked, "Father, after a while, the entire Nan family will know that I have become a cripple, right?" Nan Yifan frowned. Every word in this sentence made him feel incomparably uncomfortable. "It's all because your son is useless. I have wasted all your efforts over the years." Nan Yuxing laughed at himself. After a moment of silence, he finally turned his head and looked at Nan Yifan. "Father, I want to ask you for a favor." Nan Yifan stepped forward and nodded. "Just say it." Nan Yuxing's expression became a little strange. Instead of dragging out an ignoble existence like this, becoming a cripple and being mocked by others, it's better to just die. Nan Yifan's pupils contracted. Nan Yuxing did not seem to notice the change in his father's expression, and continued. "Those people are unreliable. Why don't you do it yourself? Today. In the future, to the outside world, you can just say that I died from serious injuries, or any other reason will do. Anyway, as long as you don't say that I have become a cripple." The more Nan Yuxing spoke, the brighter his eyes became. He seemed to think that this was a good idea. That excited and even expectant expression made Nan Yifan feel a chill in his heart. "Yuxing, what nonsense are you talking about?" Nan Yifan shouted harshly. Nan Yifan didn't care about his anger at all, and even laughed in a low voice. "You know it too, don't you? If I live like this, I will only become a pitiful and laughable cripple. What's the point of that? It was better to die now." When people talked about him, they would say, "It's a pity that he died young." Nan Yuxing really regretted it. Back in the god-slaying tomb, he should have just killed himself. Why did he have to come back and bear all this? Looking at his son's fervent and crazy face, Nan Yifan suddenly could not reprimand him. It was as if something was stuck in his chest, making him feel very uncomfortable. After a long silence, he suddenly said, "Don't worry, Father will help you think of a way." With that, he turned and left. Nan Yuxing looked at his back, that disappeared outside the door. The smile on his face gradually faded, and a trace of defeat and self-mockery appeared in his eyes. Since they had already reached such a state, what else could they do? The two guards in charge of guarding the courtyard heard footsteps and looked back. When they saw Nan Yuxing come out so quickly, they were surprised. How long had the family had been in there? It hasn't even been a quarter of an hour, right? He came out so quickly. When Nan Yifan walked closer, they realized that his face was rather ugly. The two looked at each other, then quickly retracted their gazes and waited respectfully. Nan Yifan walked over. When he passed by the two, his footsteps paused. During this period, you must keep a close watch on the eldest young master. If anything happens to the eldest young master, both of you will be buried with him. The two were shocked and quickly responded, yes. Only then did Nan Yifan leave. Nan Yifan returned to the study with a heavy heart and sat alone for a long time. In the Divine Ruins world, there was indeed a top figure who might be able to help Nan Yuxing repair his Yuan Meridian. But that person was not easy to get along with and had a very strange temper. Even if he personally went, he might not be able to persuade him. If he had any other choice, he would not want to have anything to do with him. But when he thought of Nan Yuxing begging him to end his life, Nan Yifan did not care about anything else. After struggling for a long time, when dusk fell, the afterglow of the setting sun shone in through the window. A trace of determination flashed in his eyes, and he finally stood up. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1783. Invite Elder Nan Yi and Elder Wu Peng over. Nan Yifan ordered the people outside. The two elders quickly rushed over and entered the study one after another. Nan Yifan was writing something on the table. Master. The two elders bowed together. Nan Yifan nodded and didn't stop writing. The two elders tactfully waited in silence. About half an hour later, Nan Yifan finally stopped writing. He picked up the paper and read it carefully before looking at the two elders in front of him. I invited the two elders here today because I have something important to discuss. Nan Yifan went straight to the point. I plan to go out for a trip. It will take about 10 days. During this time, I'll leave everything in the family to the two of you. The two elders were astonished. Elder Nan Yi asked, where are you going, master? Is it going to take that long? Nan Yifan was very strong and could travel quickly. Under normal circumstances, even if he wanted to go out for business, it wouldn't take more than 10 days. Moreover, the Nan family was in an extremely sensitive and critical period. If he left now and something happened, Yuxing's condition can't be delayed any longer. I know someone who might have a way, and I plan to ask him personally. If he can cure Yuxing's illness, that would be the best. If not, then I'll have no regrets. Elder Nan Yi was even more surprised. There's such a person in the world? He was a celestial physician, an extremely powerful existence among celestial physicians. However, he was still helpless in the face of Nan Yuxing's condition. Someone who could cure Nan Yuxing. Wouldn't that be better than him? That was a person who only existed in rumors. If you can really ask this person to cure eldest young master's illness, that would be great. Elder Wu Peng wasn't so optimistic. He glanced at Nan Yifan and saw that he didn't look relaxed. After thinking for a while he asked, Master, is this person very difficult to ask? Nan Yifan smiled bitterly and nodded. It wasn't just difficult to ask, there were many other troubles. This was also why he didn't choose this path when Nan Yuxing was first crippled. If it wasn't for Nan Yuxing's words today, he wouldn't have done it no matter what. Now there was really no other way. Yuxing and Yi's situation isn't very good right now. Many people in the clan are watching them. You must pay more attention. Before I return, you must not reveal their situation to anyone. Furthermore, my whereabouts this time around are to be kept a secret. If anyone asks, just tell them that I'm in closed-door training. The two elders answered and saluted. Rest assured, Patriarch. Only then did Nan Yifan feel relieved. He handed the piece of paper he had written earlier to Elder Wu Peng. If someone discovers that something is wrong, and I haven't returned in time, Wu Peng, You will take over the responsibility of the patriarch. This handwritten letter will be kept as a keepsake. Elder Wu Peng's expression froze. At this point, he had a faint premonition that Nan Yifun's trip would be very dangerous. He took the letter with both hands, hesitated for a moment and said, "Patriarch, since this trip is dangerous, then should we add more people?" "That's not necessary." Nan Yifun lightly waved his hand. A bright teleportation formation suddenly appeared in the middle of the study. He lifted his foot and walked over. "I'll handle this matter myself. You just have to stay here and watch over everything." Seeing that he had made up his mind, the two elders didn't try to persuade him. "Farewell, Patriarch." Nan Yifun nodded. The next moment light flashed. The teleportation formation slowly rotated. Nan Yifun's figure soon disappeared. Yuntian Tower. Everyone had received the news in advance that the Holy Sun would return with the princess today. Thus, the elders had gathered in the ethereal hall early in the morning and were waiting. Everyone looked out of the hall from time to time. Previously, the Holy Sun said that he would go to the Phoenix God Mountain to bring the princess back. Why did it take so long? Speaking of which, it's strange. Wasn't the princess always in Lingxiao Academy? Why did she suddenly go to the Phoenix God Mountain? That's because the princess and the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan have a lot of conflicts. Don't you know that the princess has contracted with the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix? Hiss, are you serious? Didn't they say that ancient divine beasts don't contract with humans? Then the princess's Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix is. Actually, I don't know if the princess is too lucky or too unlucky. Her Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix is actually the Crimson-tailed Phoenix from before. There are so many Crimson-tailed Phoenixes in the world, but there are very few who can advance further. It has to be said that this is an opportunity that ordinary people can only envy. But this is where the trouble lies. If it was another divine beast, there wouldn't be any problem. But what kind of existence was the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix? For so many years, they had almost never interacted with humans. How could they let this matter go so easily? That's true. It seems that the Scarlet Gold Heavenly Phoenix clan's patriarch, Yi Zhao, personally wrote a letter to the Spirit Firmament Academy, asking the princess to personally visit. His Highness the Holy Sun went down for so long before returning. In other words, the Holy Sun must have paid a heavy price to help Shang Guanyu this time. Everyone discussed animatedly. Most of them had the same opinion about this matter. After all, the Great Void Phoenix Dragon clan was famous for being arrogant and prideful. Especially Yi Zhao, he was very difficult to deal with. It wasn't surprising that they would think this way. 36 respected Elder Ming sat in his seat and leaned against the back of the chair. He listened to the various discussions with a relaxed expression. Since the Holy Sun has brought the princess back, it means that the matter has been successfully resolved. What's there to worry about? The hall fell silent for a moment. That was true, but who knew what the inside story was? Someone asked. 36 respected Elder Ming, aren't you worried at all? That Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan is not to be trifled with. 36 respected Elder Ming laughed out loud. So what? Don't forget that the princess's Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix has been with her since a few years ago. It's just a coincidence that it broke through now. Even if the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan wants to do something, they have to be reasonable, right? Besides, the Holy Sun and the princess aren't ordinary people. How can they be bullied by them? These words were really irrefutable. The person who asked the question still wanted to say something, but he was stopped by the person next to him. Don't ask. 36 respected Elder Ming is famous for being protective of our princess consort. Even if there's really any trouble because of this, he won't say anything bad about the princess. Hearing this, that person swallowed the rest of his words. At this moment, someone hurried in from outside. 36 respected Elder Ming, Shang Guanyu is here. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1784. The hall instantly fell silent. Quite a few people looked surprised. Shang Guanyu? Who is that? It sounds like he's from the princess consort's side. 36 respected Elder Ming's eyes lit up, and he stood up. Hurry up and invite him in. Yes. The guards retreated respectfully. Only the people in the hall were left looking at each other. Respected Elder Pure Dust probed. 36 respected Elder Ming. This Sheng Guanyu. May I know who he is? 36 respected Elder Ming chuckled. He is the princess consort's father. Everyone understood. It was indeed that person from the Tianling dynasty. But why did he suddenly invite him over? Suddenly, someone seemed to have thought of something. Could it be that His Highness is planning to hold a grand wedding? 36 respected Elder Ming stroked his beard with a smile. This was a tacit agreement. Many people were stunned on the spot, and it took them a while to react. Actually, it was indeed time for His Highness to hold a grand wedding. After all, it had been a long time since the princess consort selection. During this time, His Highness had mentioned a few times that he wanted to hold a grand wedding, but it was delayed by various things. As a result, everyone gradually forgot about this matter. Now that they suddenly heard it, it was inevitable that they would be surprised. No wonder the princess consort's father was invited. Since their daughter was getting married, their parents naturally had to come. Soon, an unfamiliar figure appeared outside the hall. The guard's voice sounded. Everyone turned to look at him. Most of them were curious about what the princess consort's family was like. Sheng Guanyu came to the front of the hall and looked up. The ethereal hall. It was grand and dignified. Even before they entered, they could already feel a heavy pressure pressing down on them silently. Sheng Guanyu recalled what he had seen and heard along the way, and he still felt like he was in a dream. This was the place where Yu was now. Sheng Guanyu had heard of the Divine Ruins world, and later, he learned a lot about it, including the Yuntian Tower. He knew that any sect in the Divine Ruins world was stronger than the Tianling dynasty. Among them, the Yuntian Tower was one of the best. However, when he really arrived here, he realized that everything was even more. For a moment, Sheng Guanyu did not know what words to use to describe his inner feelings. He only felt that something was surging between his chest and abdomen. Lord Shengguan, all the revered elders are waiting inside, please. With a warm smile on his face, Yuemo politely and respectfully invited Sheng Guanyu in. Although Sheng Guanyu was the Tianling emperor, they were currently in the Divine Ruins world, so it was naturally inappropriate for him to address him as such. After thinking for a while, Sheng Guanyu took the initiative to suggest that he should call himself that. In any case, it was just a title. The most important thing was to come and see Yu. Sheng Guanyu nodded and walked into the main hall. The moment Sheng Guanyu came in, countless eyes fell on him. He looked to be in his 40s, and wore a navy blue brocade robe. Although there were traces of age on his face, it still couldn't hide the handsomeness and elegance of his youth. Sheng Guanyu's appearance was indeed somewhat similar to his. Most importantly, he exuded an extraordinary aura. Even though he came from outside the Divine Ruins world, he was still able to walk calmly in the ethereal hall where experts gathered. Many people thought to themselves, the people of the Shengguan family all seem to have such vigor? Be it Sheng Guanyu or the current Sheng Guanyu, they didn't seem to know what fear and cowardice were. People outside of the Divine Ruins world, even if they were born as monarchs, would often show some cowardice and fear when facing them. However, Sheng Guanyu was different. Lord Shengguan, you're finally here. 36 esteemed Elder Ming stood up and walked over with a smile. Sheng Guanyu swiftly assessed the situation in the main hall and determined that the old man before him was the one with the highest standing in the hall. Sensing the other party's goodwill and welcome, Sheng Guanyu felt slightly relieved. He immediately bowed with a smile, paying respects to 36 esteemed Elder Ming. 36 esteemed Elder Ming was surprised. You recognize me? He didn't remember meeting Sheng Guanyu before. Sheng Guanyu nodded with a smile. Yuemo mentioned it on the way here. I noticed that you have an extraordinary disposition, so I thought that it should be you. Everyone present could tell that he was trying to curry favor with Sheng Guanyu. But so what? 36 esteemed Elder Ming was an esteemed figure. Even those from the Yuntian Tower had to be respectful to him, let alone Sheng Guanyu, an outsider from the Divine Ruins world. Besides, 36 esteemed Elder Ming was an extremely picky person. He wouldn't be interested in just anyone trying to curry favor with him. Ha ha ha. Lord Shangguan is too polite. 36 esteemed Elder Ming burst into laughter upon hearing those words. Clearly, he was very pleased with Shangguan Yu's words. This also meant that his attitude toward Shangguan Yu was very friendly. Many people exchanged glances with one another. It seemed like 36 esteemed Elder Ming really thought highly of Princess Yu. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given Shangguan Yu so much face. The Inceptive Sage and Princess Yu are currently rushing back, and they should be back today. Lord Shangguan, do you want to wait for them together? 36 esteemed Elder Ming knew that Shangguan Yu must be worried about his daughter. So he took the initiative to explain. Only then did Shangguan Yu understand. No wonder they hadn't seen you, even though they had been here for so long. So it's because she hasn't returned yet? He nodded. Then I'll have to trouble you. 36 esteemed Elder Ming laughed. What's so troublesome about this? Lord Shangguan, just follow me. 36 esteemed Elder Ming actually brought Shangguan Yu to the innermost part of the hall and pointed to the first seat on the right. Lord Shangguan, please take a seat. Shangguan Yu hesitated for a moment. I'm afraid this isn't appropriate, right? In this hall, the chairs were divided into two sides. 36 esteemed Elder Ming sat on the first seat on the left. He asked him to sit on the first seat on the right. 36 esteemed Elder Ming said, You're the Princess Yu's father, and your status is honorable. Naturally, you can sit on this seat. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1785. Hearing those words, Shangguan Yu pondered for a moment before taking a seat. He vaguely knew a little about Rongxiu's background. Even though he was the holy son of the Yuntian Tower, he had lost his parents. Only 36 esteemed Elder Ming could be considered his elder in kin. No one was more qualified than 36 esteemed Elder Ming to sit in this position. As for himself, it was because of Yuer. Yuemo stood behind Shangguan Yu and introduced the people in the hall one by one. Shangguan Yu greeted them one by one. On the way here, Yuemo had told him many things about the Yuntian Tower, including the temperament of the elders, their likes and dislikes, and so on. As such, even though this was Shangguan Yu's first time here, he was very considerate in every aspect, making it impossible for anyone to find fault with him. Some people originally wanted to find out something from Shangguan Yu, but they were all solved by Shangguan Yu with little effort. It was only then that everyone realized that even though Shangguan Yu was born outside of the Divine Ruins world, his wits and means were on par with those present. After a round of banter, the crowd gradually calmed down. Everyone began to wait for the return of Rongxiu and the others. At the foot of Bright Reversal Peak, a few young men and women were descending the mountain. Each of them was carrying a dark green wine jar in their arms. 36 esteemed Elder Ming sure is picky. The ethereal hall has already stored the wine, but he still wants us to retrieve it from the clear Jiuquan. The wine of the clear Jiuquan was extraordinary. It had to be stored in specially made wine jars, and it couldn't be stored in a universe ring. It had to be carried on one's shoulders. The few trips had depleted quite a bit of their origin energy. A tall and thin young man wiped the sweat off his forehead. This was already his second trip to retrieve the wine. A round-faced woman beside him harumphed. It's because the elders think highly of us that they allowed us to go. Otherwise, given our standing, it would be difficult for us to even enter the ethereal hall. I heard that it's beneficial to our cultivation. What benefits? He's just trying to coax you. The tall and skinny man interrupted her impatiently, his face full of disapproval. If revered elder is really thinking for us, why don't you just give us some good pills or divine tools? Which one isn't stronger than this one? In his opinion, this was just hard work to serve others. The round-faced woman wasn't convinced, but she couldn't argue with him. After all, this was her first time doing this, so she wasn't sure if it was really beneficial to her cultivation. She paused for a moment before saying, Even if there are no benefits, this is what we should do. His Highness, the Holy Sun, and the Princess Consort are coming back today, and there are also important guests. Of course, The wine has to be the best. Honored guest? Are you talking about that Shang Guanyu? The tall and thin man laughed. Haven't you noticed that he's just a demigod? He's not even a true god-level expert. How could such a person become a distinguished guest of our Yuntian Tower, if it wasn't for his great luck and the princess's blessing? The disdain in his voice was undisguised. The round-faced woman didn't expect his words to be so direct and unpleasant. She was stunned for a moment. A moment later she stammered. But he's still the princess consort's father. Don't you think it's inappropriate for you to say that? What's inappropriate about it? Aren't I speaking the truth? The tall and thin man lifted the wine jar in his hand and sneered. In the world of gods, the strong are respected. He doesn't have the strength to back it up, so no one will think highly of him. Do you think that all of the elders in the ethereal hall are respectful toward him? I dare say that most of them don't think much of Shang Guanyu at all. The round-faced woman was rendered speechless. Those words were unpleasant to the ears, but they made sense. The reason why they were so polite was because of the Holy Sun and the princess consort. However, if one were to talk about the Holy Sun of the ethereal hall, there were only a handful of them who truly acknowledged and welcomed him. The other woman who had been silent all this while spoke up. No matter how strong he is, he's still the princess consort's father. Regardless of how powerful he is, his standing in our Yuntian Tower won't be low. Besides, the Holy Sun is married to Miss Shangguan. No matter what, Miss Shangguan is outstanding in all aspects. She was beautiful, and her words were gentle. Hearing her words, the tall and thin man's expression softened significantly. You're right. Actually, I just feel that. Your Highness, marrying this consort is still a little. He paused for a moment. There are many noble ladies in the world of gods who admire our Holy Sun. If we can form a marriage alliance with them, the situation will be very different. The smile on the woman's face remained unchanged. Our princess consort is also outstanding, isn't she? That senior Shangguan Jing is a supremacy blacksmith. A supremacy blacksmith is indeed formidable, but compared to those sects with deep foundations, the tall and thin man shook his head. He didn't finish his words, but the meaning behind his words was clear. The round-faced woman glanced at the two of them and said hesitantly, "But I heard from the revered elders that other than Shang Guanyu, the Holy Sun has invited many of the princess consort's friends to his wedding. His Highness values the princess consort a lot." The tall and thin man didn't think much of it. The princess consort has no foundation in the world of gods. Naturally, he has to invite more people to make it more lively. Otherwise, wouldn't the scene be unbearable? The beautiful woman smiled. That's enough. These are not things we can discuss. It's fine to talk about it in private, but don't let others hear it. Let's go. If we wait any longer, we won't have time to get the wine. After saying that, she took the lead and walked forward. The remaining two didn't say anything else and followed behind her. After their figures gradually disappeared into the distance, the void fluctuated, and a figure walked out. She was wearing a red dress, and her figure was slender and exquisite. Her black hair hung down, which made her snow-white face even more beautiful. It was Chu Luiyue. She looked in the direction where those people left and raised her eyebrows slightly, revealing a mysterious smile. It seemed that many people in the Yuntian Tower had such thoughts. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1786. Originally, she had come back with Rong Xiao and the others. However, after hearing the news that her father had arrived, she decided to go back and change her clothes before going to meet him. During this period of time, she had been busy running around. Although there weren't any injuries on her body, she still looked a little travel-worn. This was the first time she wanted to meet her father in the Divine Ruins world. Naturally, she wanted to show her best appearance so that her father could be at ease. She didn't expect that the moment she arrived, she would hear those people mention her and her father. She simply set up a barrier and hid. Just like that, she listened to their conversation. "Are you?" Dumpling asked in her heart. "Aren't you angry that they said that about you?" When she heard those words just now, She almost couldn't help but rush out. Chu Luo chuckled. What's there to be angry about? They're telling the truth. She was very clear about what kind of place the Divine Ruins world was. Here, the strong preyed on the weak, and the strong were respected. She wasn't from an aristocratic family, so there was nothing to argue about. Even if there was a Taizu now, the Taizu had always been working alone. Although they had made an extremely high reputation, it was difficult for two fists to fight against four hands. Just relying on the Taizu alone, they couldn't support the Shangguan family. The sects and families that were able to establish themselves in the Divine Ruins world all had top-notch god-level experts in their ancestors. Furthermore, they had passed down the power of their bloodline from generation to generation. They had a deep accumulation and foundation. Indeed, they couldn't be compared to them. Hearing Chu Liyue's words, Dumpling snorted angrily. I don't care. They said that about you, so they should be punished. I've already memorized their voices. The next time I see them, I'll definitely teach them a lesson. She wasn't even afraid of Grandpa Patriarch, so why would she be afraid of these people? Chu Liyue's brows twitched slightly. She really liked Dumpling's ability to hold grudges. However, Dumpling, I know you can beat 1, 2, or even 3 of them. But can you beat more than that? Dumpling was stunned. There must be a lot of people in Yuntian Tower who think this way. Even if we take care of a few of them, it still won't change their minds. Dumpling hesitated. Then what should we do? Chu Liyue raised his head slightly and looked at Duming Peak. Gazing upward, Zhang Xian could already see the majestic ethereal hall. Needless to say, almost all the important figures in the Yuntian Tower were gathered there. Her eyes flickered as if thousands of stars were sprinkling down, and the light was fragmented. If you want them to acknowledge your position, the only way is to become stronger than them. At this moment, a familiar voice sounded. You are. Chu Liyue turned around and saw that Rong Xiao had unknowingly appeared behind her. He had also changed into a snow-white robe, even though his previous set was also very clean. Have you been waiting for long? Previously they had agreed to meet here. Chu Liyue shook her head with a smile. No, I just arrived. Rong Xiao walked closer. Standing here, he could even smell the faint fragrance of her body after bathing. When he lowered his eyes slightly, he could see her beautiful face. Under her smooth and full forehead were 2 fan-like thick and long eyelashes. Her nose was tall and straight, and he could vaguely see her cherry lips. After this period of running around, she seemed to have slimmed down, but her figure seemed to have become more slender, tall, and exquisite. Unknowingly, the youthful aura of a young girl had already disappeared. She was like a flower that was gradually blooming, gradually revealing her beauty and brilliance. Just a glance was enough to make one's heart waver. She was becoming more and more similar to her previous appearance. Rong Xiao Yu. At this moment, Shangguan Jing and the others had also rushed over. Earlier, Rong Xiao had specially arranged a place for them to tidy up. Thus at this moment, the 3 of them were no longer haggard, and they looked much more energetic. Rong Xiao's lips curled up. Since everyone is here, let's head to the ethereal hall together. His Highness Inceptive Sage has arrived. His Highness Consort has arrived. Everyone who was waiting in the ethereal hall could not help but widen their eyes in shock. Everyone turned their gazes toward the entrance. 2 figures were walking in side by side. The man on the left was dressed in a snow-white robe. He had a tall figure and a seductive appearance. However, he exuded an indescribable elegance that made one subconsciously look up to him. The woman standing by his side wore a red dress that fluttered in the wind. She was slender, tall, and peerlessly beautiful. She clearly had an extremely beautiful and exquisite appearance. Yet her eyes were clear, and penetrating. She faintly carried a piercingly cold heroic aura, and it was especially eye-catching. The 2 of them walked side by side against the light, and they appeared before everyone's eyes together. A faint layer of light shrouded their bodies. At a glance, it was as though 2 immortals had arrived hand in hand. What a pair! At this moment, everyone in the hall couldn't help but be impressed. Putting everything aside, just in terms of appearance and disposition, the 2 of them were indeed a perfect match. Just looking at them like this was enough to delight one's eyes. 36 esteemed Elder Ming was the first to react. He stood up with a smile and walked over to greet them. Welcome back, Your Highness Inceptive Sage and Princess Consort. As soon as he moved, everyone immediately reacted and bowed as well. We welcome back, Your Highness Inceptive Sage and Princess Consort. Chu Liyue's gaze skipped over these people and landed on the figure at the deepest part of the hall. She couldn't be any more familiar with that figure and that appearance. Shang Guanyu stood up and wanted to walk over. But he realized that his heart was pounding furiously. His legs had stiffened, and he was unable to move at all. His eyes were fixated on the face that he had been thinking about day and night. With trembling lips, he finally managed to call out. You are. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from LoveNet. Chapter 1787. Chu Liyue's eyes stung as she walked over quickly. Father. Seeing that she had moved, Shang Guanyu hurried over. The father and daughter were speechless when they saw each other. Shang Guanyu looked at her from head to toe, and something seemed to be surging in his eyes. After a while he said, You've lost weight. Thousands of words condensed in his chest, but his throat was extremely dry. In the end, he could only say such a short sentence. There was a slight tremor in his voice. Chu Liyue blinked, and the tears in her eyes disappeared. She smiled brightly. Long time no see. Father, how are you? Shang Guanyu hurriedly said. Good. Father, everything is fine. Tianling is also fine. I just miss you. How could he not miss her? When they parted last time, he thought that she would only stay in the world of divine ruins for a short period of time, and would return soon. Who knew that so much time had passed in the blink of an eye? She didn't go back, but he came here. Is it too hard for you here? Shang Guanyu looked at her face, which had obviously lost a little weight, and his heart ached. Chu Liyue smiled like a flower. Father, you're worrying too much. Look at me, my strength has increased a lot. Shang Guanyu noticed that her aura had indeed increased a lot compared to when they parted. You've broken through to the high god level. Shang Guanyu asked in shock. Chu Liyue nodded, and then took his hand. It's a long story. I'll explain it to you in detail, when we have time later. Her father knew almost nothing about everything that had happened to her in the world of divine ruins. He didn't know that she had broken through to the high god level when she came to the world of divine ruins a few years ago. She didn't tell her father before, because she was afraid that he would be worried. But now, it was indeed time to tell him. Shang Guanyu nodded vigorously. I'll listen to you. As long as you're willing to tell me, I'm willing to listen. Chu Liyue's heart warmed. At this time, Rong Xiu also came forward and saluted Shang Guanyu. I haven't formally introduced myself to you before. Junior Rong Xiu, the holy son of the Yuntian Tower, greets Lord Shangguan. Rong Xiu's attitude was very respectful and polite. Shang Guanyu looked at him with emotion. In fact, he already knew that Rong Xiu's identity was unusual, but he didn't expect it to be even more shocking than he expected. The ruler of a first-rate family, the famous war god of the divine ruins world. In the past, he only thought that Rong Xiu was gentle, polite, and had an extraordinary temperament. No matter what situation he encountered, he was always calm and collected. Now that he saw Rong Xiu again, Shang Guanyu finally realized that Rong Xiu's calm aura was the reason for his strong abilities. How could an ordinary person have such an aura? I'll have to trouble you to take care of you, during this period. Shang Guanyu said. Rong Xiu chuckled. This is what Rong Xiu should do. Of course he would protect his woman. Shang Guanyu breathed a sigh of relief. Originally, he was a little worried that the gap between their identities was a little big. But judging from Rong Xiu's attitude, he didn't have to worry about this. You didn't misjudge him. At this moment, another announcement was heard. Everyone in the hall turned their heads and saw 3 figures walking towards them. Many people knew the one at the front. It was the famous Sheng Guanjing. The old man beside him had white hair and a sage-like demeanor. The aura on his body was also not to be underestimated. It was the dean of Lingxiao College, Nan Suhuai. Nan Suhuai was very famous, but not many people had seen him before. After all, only a few people in the entire Yuntian Tower had been to Lingxiao College. In the past few years, Nan Suhui had disappeared without a trace. He hadn't appeared much, so there were even fewer people who knew him. Many people were surprised. As the dean of Lingxiao College, Nan Suhui had always maintained a neutral attitude. He rarely went to other aristocratic families in the Divine Ruins world. But now he had come directly to Yuntian Tower. Did he come for Shang Guanyu? Some people glanced at the red-clothed woman standing in the middle of the hall. They had heard that Shang Guanyu was actually Nan Suhui's personal disciple. Moreover, Nan Suhui valued and doted on her a lot. Now it seemed that the rumors were true. Nan Suhui came to Yuntian Tower for her without hesitation. His appearance with Shang Guanjing was enough to show his position. He was here to support Shang Guanyu. The people in the hall exchanged greetings with Shang Guanjing and Nan Suhui one after another. However, when they saw the third person, they were surprised and at a loss. Who was this person? Chu Ning frowned slightly when he sensed those sizing up gazes, but he quickly returned to normal. Indeed, he was the person with the lowest background here. If it wasn't for Yu, he wouldn't even have the chance to go to the Tianling dynasty, let alone come to the Divine Ruins world, and be in the same room with people from a first-rate aristocratic family, like Yuntian Tower. If it was in the past, he might have been nervous and perturbed when facing this situation. But now he wasn't. He had experienced too much during this period of time. Countless pain and torture couldn't make him bow his head. Now this was just a small matter. He had to admit that although those nightmarish days had brought him deep pain, it had indeed caused him to change greatly from the inside out. He had never thought of that before, but now, he felt that it was just SOSO. Because of this, Chu Ning's attitude was exceptionally magnanimous. He stood beside Shang Guanjing and Nan Suhui. Although his aura couldn't be compared to theirs, his calm attitude didn't lose out at all. Someone couldn't help but whisper, "Strange, he's just a stage 1 warrior. How can he have such an aura?" A stage 1 warrior was even worse than many children in Yuntian Tower. However, his expression was magnanimous, as if he didn't feel embarrassed at all. Many people heard this. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows slightly, perhaps because he was afraid of Rong Xiu and the others. The person who spoke was actually quite polite. However, it was hard to say what he was thinking. Chu Luiyue was calm and composed, and she wasn't angry. She knew what these people were really thinking, and she also understood why they had such a reaction. But there was nothing to be concerned about. Chu Ning had the indestructible divine body. As long as he cultivated well, he would definitely advance by leaps and bounds. At that time, many of the people here would probably be defeated by him. "Father, let me introduce you." Chu Luiyue pulled Shang Guanyu over. "Since you know Taizu, I won't say much. This is the dean of Lingxiao College and also my master. And this is my father when I was in Yaochun." Her words sounded a little awkward. Shang Guanyu looked enlightened. "You are Chu Ning?" Chu Ning also understood the identity of the person in front of him when he heard Chu Luiyue address him. His heart tightened slightly. Yes. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1788. Chu Ning had been able to remain calm in the face of so many people's scrutiny and doubts. However, he suddenly became nervous when facing Shang Guanyu. He was nervous mainly because Shang Guanyu's identity was too special. He was Yuer's father. He had thought about this when he found out about Yuer's real identity. Now that they met, he realized that it was more awkward than expected. Chu Ning didn't know what identity he should use to face Shang Guanyu. However, when Shang Guanyu heard that, he suddenly took half a step back and bowed deeply to Chu Ning. Chu Ning was shocked and hurriedly said, "No." Shang Guanyu's status was higher than his, and he was Yuer's real father. He really didn't dare to accept this bow. However, Shang Guanyu was very insistent. He stood up and sincerely said after he finished bowing, "I'm sorry, but I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. Chu Ning, thank you for taking care of Yuer previously." He knew that many things had happened to Yuer when she was in Yaochun. If not for Chu Ning's protection, Yuer would have suffered a lot. When he was lying unconscious in the Tianling Palace, it was Chu Ning who gave Yuer a home. His heart was filled with endless gratitude towards Chu Ning, Chu Ning's emotions surged when he heard these words. He didn't expect Shang Guanyu to think this way. He thought that, Chu Ning, it's yours blessing to have a father like you. Shang Guanyu said sincerely. Chu Ning was shocked and suddenly looked up at Shang Guanyu. What he meant was, seeing Chu Ning's expression, Chu Luyue seemed to have something surging in her heart and almost drowning her. She held Chu Ning's hand and said, Father, I've already told Father before that no matter who I am, I'm still your daughter. She had occupied the real Chu Luyue's body and received the fatherly love that should have belonged to that girl. Therefore, she was Chu Ning's daughter. It didn't matter if she was Chu Luyue or Shang Guanyu. The porridge that he had cooked for her, the constant concern for her, the courage and determination to protect her time and time again. That was enough. She was Father's daughter in Yu'er. Chu Ning's heart seemed to be choked by something. He looked at Chu Luyue, and then at Shang Guanyu. Their expressions were so sincere that he almost thought he was in a dream. He had once thought that he would lose Yu'er, but in the end, Father, don't you want Yu'er anymore? Chu Luyue blinked and asked. How could this be? Chu Ning hurriedly denied. As long as Yu'er wants it, Father will always be by your side. As he said this, the weight in Chu Ning's chest suddenly dissipated. In an instant, he felt as if his entire body was smooth and comfortable. This was how it should be. No matter what, he would still love you, or dearly in the future. Seeing that Chu Ning was truly relieved, Chu Luyue also felt much more at ease. To be able to receive 2 sets of fatherly love was her luck and blessing. Rongxiu watched from the side, and a smile appeared on his handsome face. Since she was happy, he was happy too. Although there were many twists and turns in the middle, everything was finally perfect now. He could see that she was really happy. After they exchanged a few more pleasantries, Rongxiu said, Now that the dust has settled and all the elders are here, let's start preparing for the wedding. All the revered elders had already guessed his plan, so when they heard this, they weren't too surprised and all agreed. In fact, Rongxiu had already sent people to prepare for this matter long ago. So even if the notice was rather sudden, Yuntian Tower could still arrange everything in an extremely short time. Rongxiu gave a few more instructions, no matter how big or small. 36 revered Elder Ming asked, Your Highness, the people to be invited for the wedding. Rongxiu handed over a list of names. The list of people to be invited is here. Just go and invite them according to this. The invitations are with Yin Qing. Let him distribute them later. 36 revered Elder Ming's mouth twitched unnoticeably. Logically speaking, the guest list should be discussed and decided by the revered elders of the clan. But His Highness had already written it down. He really didn't want to wait for even a moment. 36 revered Elder Ming thought as he opened the list. After taking a few glances, he suddenly opened his eyes wide and looked at Rongxiu in shock. Your Highness, this. Everyone looked over curiously. What was so special about the list to make 36 revered Elder Ming, who was always calm, react so intensely? Sensing those gazes, 36 revered Elder Ming swallowed his saliva and tried his best to ask tactfully. Your Highness, this list, isn't it a little too many? His Highness really didn't make up this list randomly? Putting aside those clans and sects that were on good terms with Yuntian Tower, there were also some that weren't on good terms with them, and even some that had quarreled with them before. His Highness was planning to invite all the important figures in the entire Divine Ruins world. Rongxiu raised his eyebrows slightly. Too many? I don't think so. A wedding should be lively, shouldn't it? 36 revered Elder Ming was speechless. His Highness's words, there doesn't seem to be anything wrong, but the key was that some of the people on the list might not come. If they came, it might be even more troublesome. As if seeing through his thoughts, Rongxiu's thin lips curled up and he said calmly, I will only hold this wedding once in my life. Naturally, I have to do it well and announce it to the world. He wanted everyone in the Divine Ruins world to know. Yu'er was his. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1789. The entire Yuntian Tower became busy. The Holy Sun's wedding was a big event for the entire clan. Everyone was naturally mobilized and did not dare to slack off. During this period of time, Chu Luiyue became the most leisurely person. As the wedding was imminent, she did not stay with Rong Xiao in the sacrificial god hall. Instead, she stayed in Changyi Mountain, which was beside Duming Peak. There were many courtyards on Changyi Mountain, and most of them were scattered, so Shangguan Yu and the rest stayed there. At the very beginning, Chu Luiyue had even specially picked a suitable time to tell Shangguan Yu about everything that had happened. Of course, most of it was good. As for some of the more troublesome parts, most of it was skipped. Anyway, those things were already in the past, and there was no point in talking about it. It would only make father sad. Even so, Shangguan Yu's heart still ached after hearing it. This made Chu Luiyue even more grateful for her previous choice. On the other hand, Chu Ning had been staying in his room ever since he came to Changyi Mountain. On one hand, he wanted to let Chu Luiyue and Shangguan Yu catch up. On the other hand, he also wanted to concentrate on his cultivation. After coming to the Yuntian Tower, he realized that the strong were indeed respected here. If he stayed as a rank 1 warrior, not only would he be looked down upon, but he would also implicate Yu. Therefore, he put almost all of his thoughts and energy into this. Fortunately, he had the indestructible divine body now, and his talent had a qualitative leap. In addition, the Yuntian Tower was full of energy, which was very beneficial for cultivation. Chu Ning's cultivation speed could be said to be 1,000 miles a day. On the second day, he directly broke through to become a rank 2 warrior. On the 5th day, he jumped to become a rank 3 warrior. On the 8th day, he jumped to become a rank 4 warrior. His physical body was the divine body. When he cultivated, the absorption and digestion of the surrounding energy was no different from a real high god. In this way, it was a piece of cake for him to raise his warrior rank. As his strength rapidly increased, Chu Ning's mood became better and better. At this rate, it wouldn't take long for him to complete his breakthrough and become a true high god. Although a high god expert wasn't considered a top cultivator in the Divine Ruins world, it was still a huge improvement for Chu Ning. When he was in Yao Chun, he never thought that he would be able to reach the legendary realm one day. And all of this was because he had met Yu. As long as he could become stronger, he would be able to protect Yu in the future. Chu Luiyue also focused on cultivating in his residence. Rong Xiao had long arranged everything for the wedding ceremony, and there was no need for her to interfere in any of the major and minor matters. After asking a few questions, Chu Luiyue found that he was worried for nothing, so he simply and wisely gave up on these questions. Instead, he focused his mind and energy on his own cultivation. Even though there were quite a few accidents and dangers along the way, it was very obvious that Chu Luiyue's abilities had improved in all aspects. Especially in the god-slaying mound, she definitely benefited a lot. In the courtyard, Chu Luiyue sat quietly on a stone bench. She was toying with a stone in her hand, and there were more than a dozen stones scattered around her feet. These stones were the ones she had taken out from the god-slaying mound. They seemed to be scattered on the ground in a disorderly manner, but in fact, Chu Luiyue could clearly feel the power contained in each stone, and that restless god domain that was about to be unleashed. Dong! A stone rolled to her feet. Chu Luiyue looked down and raised her eyebrows. No, there was a boundary outside Changyi Mountain, and without permission, outsiders couldn't enter or leave at will. But it was always better to be cautious. Every single one of these stones contained a god territory. If she unleashed it, it would definitely cause a big commotion. How would she explain it if it attracted a crowd? Actually, these stones weren't rare at all. They were just some broken tombstones that she had picked up from the god-slaying mound. Thinking of that scene, Chu Luiyue couldn't help but shudder and move her feet away. The origin force here is rich. It's enough for you to replenish your energy. Don't cause trouble. She had already discovered that these stones could devour the origin force around them and convert it into her own power, making her god territory stronger. But it was a little slow. In fact, these stones were already very efficient at absorbing energy. They could almost compete with cultivators with Daijing Yuan meridians. Chu Luiyue thought it was slow because she was too fast. Hearing her words, the stones finally quieted down. Chu Luiyue looked at them for a while, then threw out some more. Some of them rolled directly into the bushes in the distance, or down the stairs. If one didn't look carefully, one wouldn't notice anything wrong with these stones. A subtle fluctuation came from afar. Chu Luiyue put down the stone in her hand and looked up. It was Umo. He walked over quickly and stood in front of Chu Luiyue. "Greetings, Your Highness." Chu Luiyue glanced at him. "Umo, why are you so happy?" She couldn't hide the smile on her face. Umo chuckled. "Your Highness, Miss Mu Hongyu is here." Chu Luiyue's eyes lit up. Then he heard a familiar clear voice. "Lu Yu." Chu Luiyue looked up slightly, and indeed saw a figure heading toward her at high speed. Her almond-shaped eyes were bright, and her willowy eyebrows were raised. Who else could it be but Mu Hongyu? Chu Luiyue stood up and went to welcome her. "Hongyu, why are you only here now?" Father was far away in Tianling, and he had been here for a few days. Mu Hongyu was at Lingxiao College, so she should have arrived earlier. She didn't know why she was delayed until now. Mu Hongyu cupped her hands pitifully. "I was delayed by something at the last minute." Lu Yu, you won't blame me, right?" Chu Luiyue raised her chin. "Tell me first. What was delayed?" At the mention of this, Mu Hongyu's face fell. "Actually, it's nothing. I've been busy breaking through recently." Chu Luiyue. "This is your reason?" Mu Hongyu coughed. "Actually, it's not completely like that. It's just that some things have happened in the academy recently." Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes. She felt that something was wrong. Mu Hongyu had always been passionate and enthusiastic about cultivation. Her aura had indeed strengthened. She must have succeeded in her death. If that was the case, why did she have such an expression? What happened in the academy? She had been very busy recently, so she didn't know much about the situation in the academy. Mu Hongyu hesitated for a while and stood up anxiously. "Sai, it's actually not a big deal. It's just that Jian Fengqi also came to the academy. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network." Chapter 1790. Chu Luiyue froze for a moment. "Who are you talking about?" "Jian Fengqi." Mu Hongyu rubbed her temples with a headache. "I don't know how he got to Fangzhou City and got into the Lingxiao Academy. It happened a few days ago." Chu Luiyue came back to her senses. She was also quite shocked by this matter. "He took the Celestial Physician's exam?" Mu Hongyu nodded. Chu Luiyue nodded in understanding. Jian Fengqi was indeed very talented in this area. Even compared to her, he was not much worse. It was normal for him to be able to get into Lingxiao College. This is a good thing. Jian Fengqi had helped her a lot in the past. Now that he was able to enter Lingxiao College to cultivate, his future would be limitless. No matter how she thought about it, this was something to be happy about. But why did Mu Hongyu look a little upset? Mu Hongyu rubbed her face in confusion. This is a good thing for him. But for me, Mu Hongyu was a little hesitant to say something. Chu Luiyue asked again. "Did Jian Fengqi make things difficult for you?" It didn't seem very likely. Jian Fengqi was quite good to them back then. "No, but he." Mu Hongyu's face turned slightly red. Chu Luiyue was very perceptive and quickly guessed something. "If I remember correctly, he seems to have your indenture contract from back then?" Mu Hongyu saw that she guessed correctly and didn't hesitate anymore. "Yes. He has been making trouble for me with this matter." "Trouble?" Chu Luiyue was stunned for a moment, then quickly understood, and her expression became a little strange. Mu Hongyu was even more embarrassed under her gaze. "Lu Yu, help me think of a way." Chu Luiyue paused for a moment. "Then what did he say and do?" Mu Hongyu choked. Just say that I ran away. He wasn't happy. He even said." She bit her lip. Chu Luiyue had already guessed the gist of it. He couldn't help but shake his head and smile. Mu Hongyu was stunned. "Lu Yu, what are you laughing at?" Chu Luiyue tapped her forehead. "I'm laughing at your stupidity." Jian Fengqi was so pitiful. "Hongyu, don't tell me you only found out now that Jian Fengqi likes you?" Mu Hongyu was stunned, but her face turned even redder. After a while, she said in a flustered and helpless manner, I don't know." Seeing her reaction, Chu Luiyue silently shed tears of sympathy for Jian Fengqi. Mu Hongyu had a straightforward personality and was intelligent and quick-witted. However, when it came to matters of the heart, she was obviously stubborn. If Jian Fengqi wasn't interested in her, he wouldn't have spent so much money to redeem her, and he wouldn't have helped her time and time again. Chu Luiyue didn't notice it at first, but now that he thought about it, he immediately realized something. Even he could tell that Mu Hongyu, the person involved, was extremely muddle-headed. Not only did she not understand the other party's feelings at all, she even said that he was looking for trouble. TSK. He really didn't know what Jian Fengqi had been through. Where is he now? Chu Luiyue asked. Mu Hongyu replied. At the academy. He should have followed you here. Why is he still at the academy? Mu Hongyu shrunk her neck. Her voice suddenly weakened, revealing a sense of guilt. He's injured. Chu Luiyue facepalmed. Needless to say, it had to have something to do with Mu Hongyu. Hongyu, you know better than anyone how Jian Fengqi treats you. Don't you like him? Mu Hongyu was stunned. She immediately lowered her eyes, revealing a trace of confusion on her face. I don't know. She had never thought about this before. Therefore, when Jian Fengqi spoke to her directly, she was stunned. Chu Luiyue's question made her remember to ask herself this question. What was she thinking? Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment, and decided to let them deal with it themselves. After all, outsiders couldn't be sure about matters of the heart. Stay in Yuntian Tower for the time being. Calm down and think about what happened between the two of you. It won't be too late for you to go back after our wedding. It's a pity that we can't invite Jian Fengqi over. Mu Hongyu nodded, but was quickly distracted by Chu Luiyue's words. Alright, Ayu. Your wedding with His Highness this time, is it very grand? When I came just now, I saw that many places were already decorated. It's so beautiful. No, the word beautiful was too superficial. It should be said that it was magnificent and shocking. Even if she only took a quick glance when she passed by, she still felt her heart skip a beat. This kind of extravagance was simply shocking. Chu Luiyue's lips curved slightly. Actually, she only took a few glances at the beginning, but she didn't look at it after that. She knew very well that Rong Xiao had been planning this for a few years. It was absolutely extraordinary, but now it seemed that it was more impressive than expected. His Highness's extravagance is indeed extraordinary, Mu Hongyu murmured. Then she suddenly realized something, and stared at Chu Luiyue in surprise. Luyu, I haven't seen you for a while. Your strength has increased again. Chu Luiyue nodded. Although she was wearing a divine artifact to hide her aura, others could still feel it. Something happened recently, Chu Luiyue said, and then changed the topic. By the way, Debao. Before she could finish her sentence, another figure flew over. It was Yenqing. Greetings, Princess. Yenqing bowed respectfully, but there was something wrong with her expression. Princess, something happened over there. I'm afraid I have to ask you to go over. Chu Luiyue was a little surprised. What's wrong? Yenqing looked at her. The 13 U guards are blocked outside the barrier. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1791. The 13 U guard is here too? Chu Luiyue was delighted at first, but then she frowned. Or were they stopped? Do you know the reason? Yenqing said. Princess, only 6 people from the 13 U guard came this time. One of them had a suspicious dangerous item on him, which caused a disturbance in the barrier. He refused to hand over the item, so he was stopped outside the barrier. Yenqing was also surprised when she heard about this. Then she immediately reported to Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue's thoughts raced as she walked forward. Take me to see. Mu Hongyu hurriedly followed him. Luyu, I'll go too. The Yuntian Tower was vast, and the barrier used to defend against enemies was also very large. Correspondingly, they were very strict about guarding the barrier. Chu Luiyue and the others attracted a lot of attention when they went to the barrier. There were not many people who could travel freely in the entire world of God, and Chu Luiyue was particularly eye-catching. Many people only took a glance from afar and knew it was her. What is Wang Fei going to do? I don't know. It looks like she's going to the barrier. Hasn't the princess been staying at Changyi Mountain all this time? Why is she suddenly going to the barrier? Hey, haven't you heard? The princess's former subordinates were stopped outside the barrier for some reason. Now both sides are in a stalemate. The princess consort is most likely going to settle this matter. I see. But they are just a few subordinates. Why did they come? They're here because His Highness, the Chosen One, invited them. What's there to guess? No, I mean, it's normal for His Highness the Saint and the princess to invite the princess's elders and friends to their wedding. But they even invited their subordinates. It's really, all in all, it made people feel a little strange. Moreover, these so-called subordinates caused trouble as soon as they arrived. They didn't seem to be easy to deal with. Someone laughed. Princess Consort isn't from the Divine Ruins world. Now that she's getting married, it's normal for His Highness Holy Son to invite more people to join in the fun. There was even a hint of mockery in his words. To put it nicely, it was lively, but to put it bluntly, it was just a show of courage. The wedding is just around the corner. If those so-called subordinates really cause any trouble, they can't blame us. Chu Liyue didn't care about that. She sped along and soon arrived at her destination. From afar she saw Xin Yi and the others. At this time, they were standing outside the barrier, and several Yuntian tower guards were blocking their way. Both sides seemed to have entered a stalemate. Since you are the princess consort's subordinates, we don't want to make things difficult for you. As long as you hand over that thing, we can immediately let you in. One of the guards frowned. It's just a waste of time for us to continue this confrontation. Cindy looked at the woman behind him. Little Hachi. The woman looked to be around 17 or 18 years old. She had a gorgeous appearance and exquisite facial features, especially her pair of eyes that were suffused with a coquettish aura and could practically suck out one's soul. She could be said to be peerless. She was wearing a colorful dress, revealing her slender and fair arms, as well as her calves. It was very eye-catching. Her wrists and ankles were wrapped with colorful ropes, which were decorated with broken jade beads. Every time she moved, her body would jingle. Her long black hair was tied up simply with a colored string, and it extended all the way to her ankles. Regardless of her appearance, just her outfit alone would attract attention wherever she went. She was Little Hachi of the 13U Guard. She didn't have a name, so everyone called her that. When Little Hachi heard this, she pursed her red lips in dissatisfaction. Big brother, I was planning to take that thing out after seeing Master. If I take it out now, it'll be a waste. Xin Yi's long and indifferent eyes narrowed slightly, but he didn't say anything else. He understood Little Hachi's personality very well. No one could force her to do something she didn't want to do. She definitely had her own reasons for being so insistent. After thinking for a moment, Xin Yi asked, "Since you're worried, why don't you just send someone to follow us in? If anything happens, we'll take responsibility for it." The expressions of the guards turned even colder. Impossible. The barrier's reaction was so strong. How could they let them in so easily? If something really happened, they wouldn't be able to escape responsibility either. Xin Yi slowly clenched his fists in his sleeves. At this moment, he was the first to sense Chu Liyue's movements. He turned his gaze and looked over. "Master is here," he said indifferently. The remaining guards came back to their senses and hurriedly followed his gaze. Little Hachi also opened her beautiful eyes wide and kept looking around. Where? She quickly saw Chu Liyue. A smile appeared on that beautiful and delicate face, instantly causing the surrounding world to lose its color. In that instant, the surrounding scenery seemed to have lost its color, leaving only her. Flirtatious and gorgeous, her beauty unparalleled. "Master!" Little Hachi waved at Chu Liyue, her figure swaying. Her pair of beautiful eyes seemed to be able to devour a person's soul. That smile of hers was truly charming. Even the guards who had been cold and stern earlier couldn't help but stare blankly at this moment. Little Hachi turned a deaf ear to them and only cared about her master. "Master! Little Hachi missed you so much after not seeing you for so long." Chu Liyue facepalmed. She knew that the one causing trouble was definitely her. "Greetings, Princess Consort." The few guards reacted and immediately saluted. Chu Liyue indicated for them to dispense with the formalities. "I'll handle it." As she spoke, she looked at Little 8. Speak, what did you bring me? She actually caused such trouble because of this. Little Hachi's red lips curled slightly, and immediately revealed a smug smile. Of course it's a good treasure. Master will definitely like it. She clasped her hands together and shook them lightly. The broken jade beads on her wrist jingled, crisp and pleasant to the ear. Then a wooden box suddenly appeared. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1792. The wooden box was about the size of a palm, and was completely black. Only the edges were suffused with a faint silver. Especially at the 8 corners, there was a special pattern of flowers and vines. At a glance, it was luxurious and exquisite. Little Hachi handed the wooden box over, and raised her eyebrows. Master, quickly open it and take a look. There's really good stuff inside. Chu Liyue curiously took the wooden box. Little Hachi was very talented as a celestial physician. She especially liked to study strange prescriptions. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to help Chi Han refine a pill that could change his aura. For her to hand it over like a treasure, it must be something extraordinary. Suddenly, Chu Liyue's eyes narrowed. Only then did she see that the flower vines on the wooden box were undergoing subtle changes. The vines and leaves moved silently, as if they were being blown by the wind. During this process, what was even more shocking was that the wooden box was actually starting to melt bit by bit, like an ice cube that would gradually melt under the scorching sun. The wooden box started to shrink at a speed visible to the naked eye after little Hachi took it out. However, no water dripped from it. It was as if it had mysteriously evaporated and disappeared. She looked at little Hachi suspiciously. Little Hachi hurriedly said, Tianya, I already said that this thing can't be taken out casually. If the box is gone, the thing inside will be ruined. As she spoke, she urged Chu Liyue to open it. The wooden box wasn't locked. Chu Liyue moved her fingers and opened it. A red elixir the size of a longan fruit was lying quietly inside. The pill's color was pure and rich, and it emitted a faint medicinal fragrance. However, there were no markings on the pill that represented its grade. There was only a small flower vine leaf pattern. It was exactly the same as the one on the wooden box. Chu Liyue was stunned at first. Then, she suddenly realized something and looked at little Hachi in shock. This is... Master, it wasn't easy for me to refine this. It must have been hard on you to bring it all the way here. Little Hachi looked at her, and saw the crux of the matter. She blinked, and a pair of soft and boneless hands climbed onto Chu Liyue's arm. She leaned against her and said in a gentle voice, Master, how do you plan to reward little Hachi? Chu Liyue's eyelids twitched. Little 8 was a natural demon. Her eyes were filled with a myriad of emotions. No matter where she went, she was the most eye-catching. Over the years, she had been seducing her, but she didn't give them a second glance. On the other hand, every time she met Chu Liyue, she would always stick to Chu Liyue seductively. After all, they hadn't seen each other for a few years. Chu Liyue almost couldn't take it when this happened so suddenly. Cough. Of course, Chu Liyue. Lingxiao Academy's herb garden is for you to use for 1 month. Really? Little Hachi's eyes lit up, and she was overjoyed. Master, you're the best to me. She had been coveting that herb garden for a long time. It was a pity that her master had always valued that herb garden, and was reluctant to let her use it. This time, it was finally a success. Seeing little Hachi sticking to Chu Liyue and acting coquettishly, Yanqing couldn't help but frown. Why was this woman like this? Chu Liyue took out the pill, and was about to swallow it. Yanqing tried to dissuade her. Princess consort, this pill. What if there was a problem? Chu Liyue smiled and said, Little Hachi is mine. Don't worry. Little Hachi glared at Yanqing. This pill was specially refined by me to help Master refine his divine body. You don't know anything. Why are you here to cause trouble? Yanqing glanced at little Hachi indifferently. His face was still expressionless, as if he didn't care about what she was saying at all. Since the princess consort said that she was trustworthy, then there shouldn't be a problem. It wasn't appropriate for him to continue speaking. But the princess consort's subordinates were all rather special. Yanqing's eyes swept across Zhenyi. and the rest without batting an eyelid. But he quickly retracted his gaze. Seeing that Enchanting actually didn't care about her, little Hachi was instantly enraged. You, Chuluyue pressed her hand. She knew that Enchanting had always been like this. It wasn't that he was targeting little Hachi. Little Hachi could only suppress the anger in her heart and snort. What do you people know? If Master uses this pill of mine, he will refine his divine body in less than a year. As soon as he said this, the guards secretly looked at each other and revealed a tacit smile. This woman was so boastful. It was a pity that she wasn't that smart. There were many high god experts in the Divine Ruins world, and there were also many pills that could help one break through to the high god level. But they had never heard of a pill in this world that could guarantee that one could refine their divine body in less than a year after using it. This woman was too good at bragging. Chuluyue's gaze quickly swept across the few of them, and she easily guessed their thoughts. The corners of her lips curled up slightly as she chuckled softly and looked away. At this moment, the wooden box in her hand had completely dissipated. Since the item has been verified and I have used it, can you let them in now? The guards hurriedly bowed. Yes. Princess Consort, please. Everyone, please. No matter what, they had to give face to the Princess Consort. Chuluyue nodded at Sun-yi and the rest. This time, they entered in a single file, and the barrier didn't produce any abnormal fluctuations. Chuluyue's gaze swept across them and smiled. Since you're here, follow me to Changyi Mountain first. I haven't seen you for a while, so let's have a good chat. With that, she turned and walked in the direction of Changyi Mountain. The others followed closely behind. It was only when their figures gradually disappeared into the distance that the guards finally relaxed. Uft. That girl called Little 8 just now was really arrogant and unbridled. She was full of nonsense. How could there be such a pill in this world? Didn't she do her homework before spouting nonsense? Saying it out loud would be a joke for no reason. I heard that they are the same as the Princess Consort, also from the Tianling dynasty. They probably think that we are as ignorant as the ordinary people from their place, right? Ha! So they are from outside the Divine Ruins world. No wonder. I really don't know how the Princess Consort chooses people to take in such people as her subordinates. Didn't you see the youngest youth over there? He looks to be only 13 or 14 years old. He's just a teenager. What can he do? I'm guessing that the Princess Consort chose these people for fun. I hope they don't cause any trouble. However, this seems to be a little difficult. They haven't even entered yet, but they've already caused a ruckus. Who knows what those people will do in the future? The guards shook their heads in disapproval. The Princess Consort is very outstanding. This is indisputable. It's a pity that there are too many people dragging her down. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1793. Enchanting escorted Chuluyue and the others to Changyi Mountain before bidding farewell and leaving with Umo. The Princess Consort and her subordinates would definitely have a lot to talk about. It was naturally inappropriate for outsiders to be present. Little Hachi pursed her red lips as she watched Enchanting and Umo's departing figures. He ran fast. If not for her master's sake, she would have already made a move just now. Chuluyue smiled as she brought the few of them back to her yard. Enchanting and Umo are both nice people. He said that just now because he was concerned about my safety. Little Hachi, don't take it to heart. Who would care about that ice-cold face? Little Hachi rolled her eyes, her face full of disdain. Hypocrite. This was the kind of person she hated the most. Chuluyue glanced at her and knew that she was still dissatisfied with Enchanting. He chuckled softly and didn't continue to persuade her. Little Hachi might have a strange temper, but she was extremely smart. Now that they were in Yuntian Tower's territory, she wouldn't really get into a fight with them. Chuluyue pushed open the door and entered, but Mu Hongyu stopped at the door. Luyu, why don't you guys talk first? I won't disturb you. She could tell that these people followed Lu Yu's lead blindly. They had traveled thousands of miles to come here, so they definitely had a lot to talk about between master and servant. Chuluyue thought about it and didn't continue to keep her. He nodded. All right. Mu Hongyu sized them up curiously one last time, then quietly closed the door and left alone. Only Chu Luyue, Sin Yi, and the others were left in the room. "Greetings, master." They bowed in unison. Chu Luyue chuckled and said, "It's been a long time. It's been a long time since we last met. You must have had a hard time coming here this time. There's no need to stand on ceremony." Little Hachi walked over with seductive steps. "Master still loves us dearly." Chu Luyue raised his eyebrows and glanced at her. "There are no outsiders here. Stand properly." Little Hachi pouted and stomped her feet like a spoiled child. Master is about to get married, so he doesn't care about little Hachi anymore. Chu Luyue helplessly held his forehead. She really didn't know what to do with little Hachi. Sinny glanced indifferently at little Hachi. Little Hachi suddenly became alert. She snorted, but still stood there obediently. In this world only Tsinny could subdue her. It wasn't because of anything else. It was because Tsinny was much stronger than her. Furthermore, he attacked without mercy. Even Chu Luyue's heart couldn't help but soften when faced with such a beautiful face. However, Tsinny would never be like that. If he said that he would dislocate little Hachi's left arm, it definitely wouldn't be her right arm that would be dislocated. Hence, little Hachi was still a little respectful towards Tsinny. Chu Luyue scanned the surroundings. This time, there were a total of 6 people, including Tsinny and little Hachi. Other than the 2 of them, Wu Yao, Yu Jiu, and Shifeng were all here. There was also little 13. Chu Luyue smiled and waved at little 13. 13, come over quickly. Haven't you grown taller recently?" Little 13 had been obediently following behind everyone. When he heard Chu Luyue call him, he immediately became happy. The youth's eyes were bright, and his appearance was delicate. His body, which was growing, seemed a little thin. There was still a hint of immaturity in his eyes, but there was also a hint of calmness that hadn't been there before. It was a sign that he was gradually growing up. Chu Luyue stood up. When little 13 walked in front of her, she realized that he was already slightly taller than her. She was stunned for a moment before she couldn't help but laugh. 13 has really grown up. 13's ears were slightly red, but his expression was very happy. In the past, everyone treated him like a child, but now, he could clearly feel that everyone's attitude towards him had changed. In short, he was very happy. Growing up and becoming stronger meant that he could help Master in the future. Chu Luyue patted 13's shoulder lightly, then looked at everyone. Apart from Sinyi, she really hadn't seen these people in a long time. "How have you guys been?" They all nodded. "Sinyi, I've been reading recently." "Very good." "Wu Yao, I've been practicing boxing recently." "Very good." "Yu Jiu, I've been practicing swords recently." "Very good." "I've been farming recently." "Very good." Chu Luyue, seeing her speechless expression, 13 hurriedly raised his hand. "I've been running recently." "Very good." Chu Luyue looked at him with gratification. "During puberty, you should run more and exercise your body." 13 was very happy to be praised. A shy and bright smile bloomed on his delicate face. "Master, you haven't praised 13 in a long time. Last time, you said that 13 cooked well, and praised 13 for eating a lot." Chu Luyue. "Oh, is that so?" She coughed. It had been a long time since she last saw them, but these people were busy with their own things as usual. "Where are the others?" "Sinyi." "Previously, His Highness the Holy Sun sent a message to Tianling. After knowing that you were going to marry the Holy Sun, I immediately informed the 13U tribe. However, time was a little tight, so only the few of us rushed over. The others were further away, so they couldn't come together. In addition, for Wells and the others were stationed in Tianling. We had to leave someone there." Chu Luyue nodded slightly. "I'm already very surprised that the few of you can come." Ever since her accident, the 13U tribe had left Tianling and scattered. After such a long time, there hadn't been a chance to gather them back. Now that 6 of them had come, it was indeed quite good. Sinny looked at her and asked, "Master, have you regained your memories?" Chu Luyue nodded. Since she had broken through to become a supreme god again and summoned back the divine realm, she had naturally regained her memories. Cindy nodded. In fact, they had already guessed this before. But this was a serious matter, so they still had to confirm it before they could truly be at ease. Chu Luiyue asked them a few more questions, and everyone answered them one by one. She also briefly told them about some of the things that had happened recently. Wu Yao looked ashamed. I didn't expect Master to have suffered so much here. It's all our fault for coming too late. Chu Luiyue smiled nonchalantly. Misfortune is a blessing in disguise. Although there were some twists and turns in the middle, fortunately, everything was daunting but not dangerous. Moreover, I gained more than I lost. Overall, it was actually a good thing. 13 clenched his fists. Master, then after this we won't go back. We'll stay in the Divine Ruins world with you. We'll protect you well. Sun Yi's expression changed slightly when he heard this, and he looked at Chu Luiyue. Master, what do you plan to do after this? Chu Luiyue knew what he was asking. She paused but didn't immediately answer this question. Instead, her lips curled up in a smile. I have a friend who has been researching how to build a teleportation formation. If you have time, go and teach him. Cindy nodded. Yes. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1794. Chu Luiyue asked with a smile. You didn't even ask who he was and agreed to it directly? Cindy nodded. Since he's your friend, there's naturally no problem. There weren't many people who could make her truly recognize this person as a friend. Chu Luiyue smiled helplessly and shook her head. Cindy was too smart, and sometimes she seemed a little boring. The friend she was referring to was naturally Lin Qifei. He didn't come this time, but she had already asked Mu Hongyu previously. Recently, Lin Qifei had been busy with the teleportation array in the academy, just like before. According to Mu Hongyu, Lin Qifei's strength had increased greatly recently, and the teleportation array was already built. Some of the elders in the academy knew about it, and were full of praise for him. However, they all thought that Lin Qifei was so diligent in studying the teleportation array because he was interested in it. But in reality, everything was because of a promise between him and Chu Luiyue. It seemed that things were progressing well. It's only a few days until the wedding. During this time, you can stay at Changyi Mountain. I've already ordered people to tidy it up for you. If there's anything, just look for me directly. Little Hachi blinked her seductive eyes and moved closer to Chu Luiyue with a smile. Master, I've only heard of this Yuntian Tower before, but I've never been here. I wonder. As long as you don't cause trouble, you can stroll around here as you wish. Chu Luiyue immediately guessed what she was thinking and directly gave her an answer. Little Hachi's smile grew even wider. I knew Master was the best. Have you heard? A few of the princess consort's subordinates from the Tianling dynasty are also here. Just now there seemed to be an argument at the barrier. This news has already spread throughout the Yuntian Tower. Who doesn't know? Didn't you say that it was because one of the women had something on her that caused the barrier to react abnormally and stop them? Hey, that's what I want to say. Do you know what it is that woman is unwilling to hand over? What? Pills. She also said that as long as the princess consort uses that pill, she'll definitely be able to temper her divine body within a year. What? There's such a pill in the world. Why don't we know about it? She's probably just trying to put up a front. After all, she's from outside the Divine Ruins world. On a mountain peak not far from Duming Peak, a few people were walking up while talking about something. Although the Yuntian Tower was vast, the news spread among the clan members was fast. Not long after the incident happened over there, many people knew it. They had nothing to say about Chu Luiyue. Her talent was extraordinary, her strength was also strong, and her appearance was one in a million, a beauty that could topple cities. His only shortcoming was his family background. Actually, I feel that the princess consort is not without a backer. Senior Sheng Guanjing's name was resounding back then. Even now, a venerable blacksmith is very rare and honorable in the entire Divine Ruins world. Moreover, the princess consort is the direct disciple of the dean of Lingxiao College. She's also very powerful. Someone had a different opinion and refuted in a low voice. That's right, but think about it carefully. Senior Shengguanjing is weak and Dean Nan. His words and actions represent the entire Lingxiao College. He would never ignore the entire college for the sake of the princess consort. In short, the princess consort has to take care of herself if she's in trouble. That's true. I heard that the princess consort's relatives, friends, and subordinates are not very strong. Let's not talk about Mu Hongyu from Lingxiao College. Although she's strong, she doesn't have any background. As for the princess consort's father, he's only a stage 1 warrior. What's there to hope for? Although the words were unpleasant, they were all true. How could it be so easy to establish a foothold in the Divine Ruins world? At this moment, a snow-white and muscular figure suddenly flew out from the bushes and pounced on them. Ah! The man standing at the front who was talking was shocked, and hurriedly retreated. However, he was fast, but the other party was faster. He only saw a blur in front of his eyes, and a white shadow flashed past. Then his body flew out uncontrollably. Bang! There was a muffled sound. A few sharp scratches appeared on his chest, and his flesh and blood rolled. The intense pain caused his face to turn pale. The remaining people were shocked, and were about to attack, but they were stunned when they saw the other party. It was a white lion. Its fur was snow-white, and its ice-blue eyes were indifferent and cold. At this moment, it was staring intently at the few of them. It lowered its body slightly, as if it was ready to attack at any time. A strong murderous intent spread from its body. The remaining people's faces also turned pale. This was the Holy Sun's magical beast. How could they attack? Moreover, they were no match for it. Its cold gaze landed on the man who was covered in wounds on the ground, causing him to shiver. He swallowed the rest of his words and did not dare to make a sound. The air seemed to have stopped flowing and froze inch by inch. The few of them tensed up. After a while, one of them forced himself to speak. Lord Xue Xue, we didn't mean what we said just now. Xue Xue narrowed its eyes. Didn't mean it? Did they think it was stupid? Roar! A low roar came from Xue Xue's throat, and then it suddenly raised its claws. Since they didn't mean it, then it would also do it a few times unintentionally. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1795. Taking care of these people was a piece of cake for Xue Xue. After a series of white flashes, the people present were all injured to varying degrees. Seeing that Xue Xue was about to continue, one of them quickly shouted, Lord Xue Xue, His Highness the Saint, and the princess consort's wedding is imminent. It's really inappropriate if someone dies. Only then did Xue Xue stop. It tilted its head and pondered for a moment, as if it was considering this person's words. The few of them held their breaths nervously, and did not dare to move. They did not even dare to utter a single word. Every second that Xue Xue was thinking was torture to them. Finally, Xue Xue turned around and left. It was indeed inappropriate to delay Master's wedding because of these few people. Seeing that it had finally decided to leave, the few of them looked relieved that they had survived a disaster. However, after taking a few steps, Xue Xue turned around again. Its cold and indifferent eyes swept across their faces, as if it wanted to remember their faces clearly. Everyone understood the meaning in its eyes. It was waiting to settle the score with them. After taking a look, Xue Xue left in a flash. The snow-white figure flashed before their eyes and soon disappeared. However, the hearts of the few people who stayed on the spot sank. Offending this person would not end well for you either. If they had known that Lord Xue Xue was so protective of the princess consort, and happened to be here, they would not have said that even if they were beaten to death. The few of them clutched their wounds and regretted it. Lord Xue Xue is a vengeful person. This time, I'm afraid it's over. One of them said regretfully. The other people's faces were deathly pale. As for the man who was attacked first, when he thought of what would happen to him, he was so angry that he fainted. However, there was no medicine for regret in this world. Everyone had to pay the price for their words and actions. Chu Luiyue was cultivating in her room. Suddenly a wave came. She opened her eyes and looked at the window. A big furry head poked in through the window. Because the body was too big, and the window was too small, it was stuck. A pair of ice-blue eyes looked at Chu Luyue innocently and pitifully. Roar! Chu Luyue immediately got up and walked over, feeling helpless and amused. Shue, why did he have to come in through the window every time? This small window can't accommodate your big body. As she spoke, she walked to the window and opened it even wider. Only then did she finally let Shue in. All right, you. Before he could finish his sentence, the liberated Shue immediately pounced on him. He hadn't seen it for a while, and it had grown a lot bigger and heavier. This time, Chu Luyue almost couldn't catch it. Fortunately, her strength had increased by quite a bit, and she barely managed to scoop Shue up. A ball of furry fur reported to her. Chu Luyue let out a long sigh. Phew. Shue, why are you so much heavier than before? Is it because you've been eating and sleeping well in the Yuntian Tower that you've put on weight? Chu Luyue was originally teasing, but after saying that, she realized that Shue's condition seemed a little off. It didn't say anything, and just leaned against her leg. Shue. Chu Luyue looked down and saw Shue's expression. It didn't seem very happy. Sensing her gaze, Shue looked up. There was a faint light in its ice-blue eyes, and it seemed to be very wronged. She was slightly stunned. Strange, Shue was happy every time it saw her. This had never happened before. What's wrong with our Shue? Who bullied you? Chu Luyue rubbed Shue's head. This was the Yuntian Tower. Even if there was bullying, it should be Shue bullying others, right? Why was it so wronged? Chu Luyue bent down and smelled an extremely faint smell of blood. Her expression changed slightly as she grabbed Shue's claws. Only then did she see that there were fresh bloodstains on its sharp nails. Who did you fight with? Chu Luyue frowned. To be able to make Shue choose to fight in the Yuntian Tower. Just as she was filled with worry, Shue suddenly leaned its head over. Chu Luyue was stunned. Shue didn't say anything. It only rubbed its big head carefully and clumsily against her shoulder. Woo! It seemed to be comforting her. It's angry. Dumpling's voice suddenly sounded in her heart. It heard someone talking bad about Ayu just now, so it fought with them. Chu Luyue suddenly understood. Her heart seemed to have been hit by something soft. Shue was protecting her. She smiled and hugged Shue's head. Shue, why lower yourself to the level of those people? Shue let out a low sound. Of course it was angry. Those people actually dared to talk about her like that. If it wasn't for the fact that it didn't want to delay the wedding, it wouldn't have let them off so easily. It would definitely take revenge in the future. Chu Luyue rubbed Shue's head. Her eyes were slightly lowered, but she was thinking about something. Dumpling asked. Ayu, look, I told you, those people don't know how to restrain themselves. They will only be obedient after being beaten up. Ayu was right, but when would she be willing to make a move? She was really itching to do it now. Chu Luyue was silent for a moment before she suddenly laughed. There are still 5 or 6 days before the wedding. Let them make a fuss one last time. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1796. Chu Luyue comforted Shue for a while, and carefully wiped the blood off its claws. She also promised that she would definitely get back at it in the future. Only then did Shue become happy again, and run around her. It had indeed been staying in the Yuntian Tower, to cultivate during this period of time. It was not allowed to come out if it did not meet its master's requirements. Therefore, Chu Luyue had been here for a long time before it was finally free. After throwing those messy things to the back of its mind, Shue became lively again. Chu Luyue simply brought it to the courtyard to play. This courtyard was not big, but to Shue, as long as it was with Chu Luyue, it was always interesting. Seeing that there were many stones in the courtyard, it rushed over curiously and used its claws to fiddle with them. Dong! A stone next to it rolled down and landed on its hind legs. Shue looked back with a blank expression. It did not move the stone. Why did it move by itself? It used its hind leg to push the stone away. In the end, a third stone rolled over. This time, the strength seemed to be a little stronger than before. Shue was a little impatient. It waved its claws and kicked the stone away. However, in the next moment, the stone actually returned. It was heading straight for Xue Xue's face at an even faster speed. The sound of air being torn apart was sharp. Xue Xue was shocked and immediately turned to look. Only then did it see that when the stone flew over, it actually cut through the surrounding space, revealing a black space crack. Danger! Xue Xue immediately became vigilant. Suddenly, a clear and gentle voice sounded. Stop fooling around. It was Chuluyue. After that, Xue Xue watched with her own eyes as the originally aggressive rock suddenly concealed all of its aura and fell to the ground with a clang. It looked no different from an ordinary stone. Just looking at it like this was really hard to imagine. A second ago, it was still full of killing intent, and the pressure from it made it tremble in fear. Xue Xue shook its head and looked again in disbelief. Those few stones had stopped. Everything just now was like an illusion. However, it did not really think that it was all fake. Chuluyue walked over and grabbed Xue Xue's ear. There aren't many people here. With your appearance, it's inevitable that they'll be a little lively. Xue Xue was confused. Them? Who? Suddenly its gaze froze. Wait. There aren't only these few stones around? Xue Xue turned her neck stiffly as a trace of shock flashed across her eyes. There seemed to be stones scattered everywhere in the entire courtyard. Moreover, it was very similar to the one that wanted to attack. Xue Xue instantly understood something as it looked up at Chuluyue. Chuluyue's lips curled. Xue Xue was smart. She did not intend to hide. If you feel bored, you can ask Tuanzi to practice with you. Xue Xue thought Xue's. Recently, she vaguely felt that her body seemed to have changed a little, so she spent most of her time sorting out the meridians in her body. Besides, what was the point of fighting with Xue Xue? Presently, the number one enemy in her heart was Zichen. She could clearly sense that Zichen's strength had now faintly surpassed her own. She had to open her fifth meridian to have a chance of winning. Thinking of this, Tuanzi was full of energy and continued to practice. Chuluyue did not know whether to laugh or cry. In fact, Dumpling's talent and strength could already be considered the best of the best. After all, in the entire Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan, she was the only one who had opened her fourth meridian at such a young age. Originally, she was sure to win against Zichen. However, Zichen's luck was also heaven-defying. He was connected to Mao Zhen's qi, and could be considered a real cheat. Even if he did not cultivate, as Mao Zhen's strength increased, his combat strength would also increase. Even Chuluyue was envious of this kind of luck. If Dumpling wanted to win against him, it was equivalent to winning against Mao Zhen. It was no wonder that she had been cultivating so diligently recently. By the way, have you told clan leader Yi Zhao and the others about what happened on Divine Dragon Island? Dumpling responded. Yes, she had the inheritance of her ancestors, so she could easily contact Yi Zhao and the others. As soon as they came out of Divine Dragon Island, Chuluyue reminded her to tell clan leader Yi Zhao and the others about what happened. Dumpling was a Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix and the young master of the clan. It was indeed a big deal for her to go to Divine Dragon Island directly, instead of hearing random rumors from other places. Clan leader Yi Zhao and the others might as well take the initiative to tell them. It would make them feel more at ease. I hope clan leader Yi Zhao and the others won't be angry. Chuluyue rubbed the space between his eyebrows. Tuanzi laughed loudly and said in a crisp voice, You don't worry. Aren't we all fine and dandy? Why would Grandpa clan leader be angry? Chuluyue coughed and thought of Yi Zhao and the others looking at Dumpling with doting eyes. She felt even more guilty. She had promised to take good care of Dumpling before. But after leaving Phoenix Godly Mountain, she had been in constant trouble. First, it was the God-slaying tomb. Then Divine Dragon Island. Fortunately, Dumpling was fine. Otherwise, Chuluyue really didn't know how to face clan leader Yi Zhao and the others in the future. When the wedding is over, I'll bring you back to Phoenix Godly Mountain to take a look. Although this trip didn't take too long, many things had happened in between. It was reasonable for him to go back and greet them. It could also be considered as a way of comforting them. Fortunately, the Great Phoenix Dragon Clan's clan leader was Mao Zhen now, so she didn't care so much about Dumpling. Otherwise, the problem would be more difficult to solve. Okay. Dumpling didn't think too much about it. When she heard that she could go back, she immediately won happily. You are? A familiar voice sounded. Chuluiwa looked up. Master, why are you here? She asked as she walked over. Nan Suhui waved his hand. I have nothing to do, so I wanted to come and see you. Chuluiwa raised her eyebrows. Oh. She knew her master best. Since he was here, there must be a reason. Nan Suhui felt guilty under her gaze. He coughed a few times and finally gave in. All right. Actually, the reason why Master came over this time is because I have something to ask you. Chu Luiyue invited Nan Suhui to sit on a stone bench in the courtyard. Then, she smiled and asked unhurriedly, What do you want to ask, Master? Nan Suhui hesitated. After a long while, he raised his chin in a certain direction. You or those few people, are all your subordinates? Chu Luiyue knew he was asking about Sun Yi and the others, so she nodded. That's right. Why? Did they get into trouble? Nan Suhui hurriedly waved his hand. Of course not. They don't know how to cause trouble like you. No, Master means, those few children don't look old, but their talents are not bad. Especially the youngest one. His physique seems to be quite good. Do you have any intention of letting him go to the academy? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1797. Chu Luiyue was stunned. She put down the cup of tea that had just reached her lips. She didn't expect her master to take a fancy to little 13. Her master's eyes were famous for being picky. Otherwise, he wouldn't have only taken her as his disciple after so many years. Being able to catch his eye was enough to prove that little 13 was indeed outstanding. Chu Luiyue thought for a while and didn't immediately agree. She asked, Why did Master suddenly think of this? Have you already checked little 13's potential? Nan Suhui shook his head. Not yet. It's just that this child has been running all over the mountains these few days. Although he's young and is only a stage 6 warrior, his speed is comparable to a stage 9 warrior. Thinking about it, this child's physique should be pretty good. Originally, I did want to call him over to take a look. But since he's your disciple, I thought of asking for your opinion first. Chu Luiyue's lips curled up slightly. It's little 13's good fortune to be favored by Master. If he can really enter the academy to cultivate, it'll be a good thing for little 13. Please wait for a while, I'll call him over. She stood up and was about to call for him when she suddenly thought of something and asked, If little 13's conditions are good, does Master plan to take him as your disciple? Nan Suhui shook his head. Of course not. It's enough for me to have you as my disciple. Besides, if he's really as good as I think, there's someone more suitable to be his master in the academy. Chu Luiyue nodded in understanding. Little 13. She raised her voice slightly and shouted into the distance. Nan Suhui was a little surprised. That child seems to be halfway up the mountain now. It's so far away he can hear. Before he finished speaking, a thin figure of a young man quickly came from afar. He ran very fast, and his movements were light and nimble. In the blink of an eye, he was already in front of Chu Luiyue. Because he ran in a hurry, his forehead and the tip of his nose were covered in crystal-clear beads of sweat. A pair of pure and sincere eyes glowed with the unique youthful vigor of a young man. Chu Luiyue's eyes swayed when she saw him. These few years, little 13 had really grown up. In her memory, he was still a child. Master, are you looking for me? Chu Luiyue came back to his senses and nodded with a smile. Come here. With that, she returned to Nan Suhui's side. Master thinks that your talent is not bad and wants to see your aptitude. If you pass, you can go to Lingxiao College to cultivate in the future. Chu Luiyue said concisely. 13 was taken aback. He looked at Nan Suhui, then at Chu Luiyue. This means he has been here for several days. Of course, he knew who the master was. He had also heard of the other party's identity. He just didn't expect that it would be related to him. When Chu Luiyue saw that he was stunned, he thought that he had startled the child. He laughed again and said, 13, what are you waiting for? Stretch out your hand. 13 obediently stretched out his hand. Nan Suhui put 2 fingers on 13's wrist. Then he separated a strand of origin power and sent it into 13's Yuan meridian. A moment later, a trace of surprise flashed across his eyes. Chu Luiyue asked, "Master, how is it?" Nan Suhui didn't answer the question immediately. He just withdrew his hand, stood up, walked to 13's side and squeezed his shoulder. 13 looked at Chu Luiyue helplessly. Chu Luiyue gave him a reassuring look. 13 then continued to sit there quietly, allowing Nan Suhui to squeeze his shoulder, arm, and other bones. After a while, Nan Suhui stopped. At this moment, the way he looked at 13 was very different from before. "Master, how is it?" Chu Luiyue felt a little guilty when she saw his reaction. Can 13 enter the Lingxiao College to cultivate? Of course, she hoped that 13 could do better. Nan Suhui paused for a long time before he turned to Chu Luiyue. His expression was serious, but there was a smile in his eyes. "If he can't enter the Lingxiao College, then I'm afraid not many people in the world can do it. That means he passed." Chu Luiyue's worried heart suddenly relaxed, and her lips curved up into a bright smile. "Really? Can't be more real. Do you think I'll lie to you?" Nan Suhui also smiled. He stroked his beard and said emotionally, I didn't expect you to have such a good seedling by your side. He has the Tianjin Yuan meridian, and his physique is special. He's a natural martial artist." Chu Luiyue was stunned by Nan Suhui's words. She didn't know that 13 had such a top talent. She widened her eyes slightly and looked at 13. 13 blinked his eyes. His expression was pure and innocent, and there was a hint of confusion in his eyes. He seemed to be at a loss of what to do with the situation in front of him. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath. 13, why didn't you tell me before?" 13 hesitated for a moment and said, "I don't know about this." Nan Suhui asked curiously, "You have such a good cultivation talent, but you haven't done any related tests before?" 13 shook his head. Chu Luiyue just remembered that 13 really didn't check on this. When she found 13, he was still very young. It was snowing heavily in the imperial capital, and it was bone-chilling. He was only wearing a thin layer of clothing, and was curled up in a corner, covered in filth. At that time, she just ordered the servants to bring him some food and clothes before leaving. However, after walking for a long distance, she realized that the child had been following her at a distance that was neither too far nor too close. At that time she was very surprised, because her carriage was very fast. Even a real cultivator might not be able to keep up with it, let alone a child. But the child's body was thin and weak, but his footsteps were very fast. He easily kept up with her. Most importantly, he followed them silently, as if he was invisible. If she didn't notice that something was wrong and found him later, no one would have noticed his existence. Chu Luiyue felt that this child was very interesting, so she brought him back. Originally, she wanted to see what his talent and aptitude was like, but many things happened at the time. She was busy dealing with them, and didn't have the time to do this. Instead, she threw him to Cini and asked him to take care of him. Later, when she was free, she thought of 13 and asked Cini about him. Cini said that 13 was quite talented, and suggested that Chu Luiyue take him in, and let them nurture him well. Chu Luiyue agreed without much hesitation. Since then, 13 became the youngest member of the 13U Guard. Chu Luiyue pursed her lips. Cini should know about 13's situation. Why didn't he say anything? Nan Suhui stroked his beard and sighed. Even if this child goes to Lingxiao College, he will definitely be one of the best among the geniuses there. Chu Luiyue nodded, and was about to speak when 13 took the initiative to speak. Master, can I not go to the college? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.